Live again? Live again. Yes, indeed. Oh, I gotta change something. All right, it's live. Yo, how you doing, Kick? Please like, subscribe, turn on those notifications. Okay, that's cool. I don't need that. Appreciate it, though. How is it not showing up? I do not know. Check 1 2. All right, that's showing up. That's good. Interesting. Oh, there we go. There we go. Yeah, it's showing up. Yo, Tara Matthews has joined the chat. How you doing? How you doing? Thank you for joining. Okay, solid. We got that one set. Actually, we have a new one. We have a new one. Let's see how this is. If it's ready. If it's not ready. The squiggly eyes. What do the squiggly eyes mean? Curious. Oops. Can't be throwing stuff around, man. Come on, what you doing? Oh, I see. Yeah. Make sure you do what you got to do. You got to plan your day. You got to plan your life. You got to arrange things properly. Oh, hit the wrong button. There you go. Nice. Yeah, good. Sounds good. Yeah. You got to make sure you get some sleep for the Easter service tomorrow. It's going to be an amazing one, I hope. I hope it's going to be amazing.
Now, if your local business...
Speaking of, we have none other than the legendary Tucker Carlson.
Father, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
As a Protestant who grew up in Georgetown, in part where The Exorcist was filmed, I've been trained from birth to think of exorcism as something kooky that the Latin Church does for weird cultic reasons, not at all mainstream Christianity. And then you go and read the New Testament.
That's right.
And you realize that the first miracle that Jesus performs in the Gospel of Mark is casting out demons, and then he repeats that continuously and commissions the apostles to do the same. And casting out demons is not just this random thing. It is central to the Gospels.
That's right. 23% of the Gospels are actually about Christ dealing with demons. So, and this is why when
It's
Christian,
just unbelievable. How did I not know that?
yeah, well, and a lot of the Christians will just say, well, I believe in God, but I don't necessarily believe in the devil. And you're like, well, do you believe in Scripture? Well, yeah. Well, then how can you not believe that this is one of the primary missions of Christ was to save us from them ultimately?
Well, when he sends the disciples, I mean, of course, this is your life. This is also new to me. I'm just shocked by it. When he sends them out, it's like, preach the good news and cast out demons.
Yes, that's right.
Like that's the mission.
That's right.
Absolutely. That is the mission. Cast out those demons. Preach the good news.
So before we get into what you've spent the last decades doing, casting out demons, how is it that the modern church, at least in the United States, at least the Protestant churches in the United States, have so de-emphasized this to the point where it's disappeared?
I think there's a historical reason behind that. So if you, and it's not just here like in the United States, it's actually in the West in general, the Christian West specifically. And basically it had to do with the advent of psychology. So when psychology came on board, it became in vogue, especially in the 50s and in the 60s, to just think that, that all these people's problems are just purely psychological. I mean, there are psychological issues that very much look like that. But the fact is that, so they just started chalking it up. And that's one of the reasons why in the United States, before the 1960s, the number of dioceses, that is the Catholic diocese that had an exorcist, was fairly high. I mean, every major diocese would have one. But then it started to decline precisely based upon that thinking. But then over the course of time, they begin to realize, well, look, there's certain things we're seeing that are not psychological, and so they can't be explained in that way, and people needed the help. And so now the bishops are coming a little bit more up to speed in that regard.
Well, yeah, after, 100 years of Freud, we still can't identify what schizophrenia is.
Absolutely, Terry. We understand that.
At the very least, there are things we don't understand that could very well be
That's right,
supernatural. Yeah. So that does make you wonder about the origins of psychology, though. I mean, if the net effect was to eliminate people's belief in something real, which is demonic possession, then...
Yeah. Well, I think that was only one aspect of it. I think that the real goal of a lot of the psychologists, which is in the literature, is that many of them are atheists. They just didn't believe in God, and so they wanted to eliminate any concept of anything supernatural, or what we call preternaturals, which is the demons are preternatural. They're not supernatural. God is the one that's supernatural, but we tend to talk that way. Although sometimes people will just say supernatural, thinking about demons in that way too.
Can you, for the ignorant like me, explain the difference between preternatural and supernatural?
So supernatural is those things which are above anything that is created, and that pertains to God. Whereas preternatural comes from the Latin word praeter and natura, which means aside from nature. So that would be things that are above what we experience as human beings in this world. But it's not supernatural because it's not God. It's kind of in that in-between state, which is what the demons are. But they're still considered natural in the sense of they have a specific nature that God created them with. They're created beings, and that they actually have a natural law. They have they're structured to think in certain patterns. And
speaking of, make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, because we're going live every single day of 2026. And we have some news about Donald J. Trump. So right now, an American fighter jet got shot down by Iran, and a U.S. pilot is missing, and Trump just gave a 48-hour ultimatum that could change everything. Yeah, so this is a major escalation. This is the first time Iran has shot down a U.S. warplane in this conflict. And that's not small, that's escalation. And we're not talking tension anymore. We're talking direct military engagement. So yeah, there's still an American pilot missing right now. And both sides are searching for him. That's where this stops being politics and becomes very real. Iranian officials are literally mocking the U.S. right now, saying the war has gone from regime change to, can someone find our pilot? That's kind of messaging matters. Like that messaging really matters. That's That's psychological warfare right there. So take it as you want, how it is, but that's a pretty big statement right there. Yeah, make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications, because we're going live every day at 2026, and it definitely helps. Let me just see what the chat said. Okay. And yeah, so this whole situation is centered around the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important oil choke points in the world. And if that shuts down, gas prices globally go crazy. And we have some video footage of people in Australia going to supermarkets. It's like completely cleaned up. There's nothing in those supermarkets at all. And that's a pretty big deal, because the people there are not necessarily in a state of peace. They're kind of rushing around, and petrol stations don't have gas. So yeah, this is pretty wild. Actually, let me drop that clip in right now to show you exactly what I'm talking about. It's not there. One sec, let me grab it for y'all. Where are you? Where are you? There you are. Okay, I'm gonna have to do a little reframe for y'all. So if you see this supermarket, there's like absolutely nothing in the shelves here, which is a little wild and discerning over here. So
There's nothing. Look at
just completely empty shelves, like absolutely empty, which is wild.
the shelves here in Darwin. What the? This is literally. There's nothing.
More than 160 petrol stations across Victoria have now run out of fuel.
Run out of fuel. 160 run out of fuel. So over here it says fuel is gone, so they walk the longest commute in the world on foot. Philippines just declared national energy emergency. Fuel reserve is 45 days. Just imagine that. A month and a half of fuel reserve. 110 million people forced to walk to the office. Intense. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications.
And look.
They're just walking on the freeway. Just walking. Yeah, Trump is a hard worker, man. That guy is constantly working. And his job is not easy, man. He's getting pulled by so many directions, which is absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. So, Trump's 48-hour deadline. Trump just gave Iran 48 hours, or quote, all hell will rain down, R-E-I-G-N, down. That's not normal language. That is escalation language. Escalation. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every day, 2026. So Trump's going quiet. This is kind of gold, right? Isn't it? What's interesting is Trump has been unusually quiet publicly the last few days. when leaders go quiet during conflict, that usually means decisions are being made behind the scenes. So there's a lot of like research and calculations going on right now, and we're gonna see what happens, honestly. So on one hand, he's threatening massive strikes. On the other hand, saying peace talks are still possible. That contradiction tells you this situation is absolutely not stable. It's not stable at all. So what do you think, chat? Do you think this escalates into something bigger? Also, chat, here's a real question. Do you trust what we're being told right now? And what would you do if you're president right now? Like, what are the options? Oh, Mr. Darcy came in the chat. BBC and ABC say he has been rescued. Thank the Lord. If you got a link, please link me. We're trying to get all the absolute accurate information here, if possible.
Certain ways, so it's kind of a middle tier, but it's preternatural. Supernatural would be something like being able to suspend the laws of nature.
Right.
So demons can't cause miracles, for example, but they can cause things that to us as human beings are outside our normal experience, and so it looks miraculous, but it's actually not. It's something that they can do on their own.
So I guess the good news about that distinction is they're not all powerful.
No, they are not. In fact, demons are one of the most regulated things in the universe, really, because and they're regulated by three things. One, as I mentioned, their natural law, their nature, they're structured a specific way. The second thing is once the demons made their choice, their will became fixed in a specific way. This is one of the reasons why when you deal with them as an exorcist, they almost seem obsessive compulsive. Even when it goes bad for them, they'll still tend towards that thing which they chose, the sin that they committed, and so they're very. Their tendency is towards that, so they're fixed by that. But the main thing is, if you remember in the Gospels, Christ says to the apostles before he sends, he said, "All power was given to me in heaven and earth." All power. That means the demons even know that they can't do anything without Christ's permission. So in the spiritual warfare landscape, we know, and this is, as an exorcist, it actually brings me a lot of confidence because I don't have to worry about if it turns into the type of thing where I get shellacked a little bit during a session or whatever the case is, then I know Christ is still controlling and metering how much and what he can and cannot do. And we know that.
Community assessment omitted reliably sourced information, such as how some Russian intelligence officials were quote-unquote planning for candidate Hillary Clinton's victory, while others assessed neither Trump nor Clinton would respect Russia's interests. As was reflected in the ODNI documents that we released on Friday, multiple intelligence community assessments released in the months leading up to the November 2016.
Mr. Darcy 44, I don't think it will escalate because there is a lot of Iranians that don't want the IRGC, so it's a tightrope. Absolutely, absolutely. Happy Easter, Oliver Rust. Thank you for joining in on the chat.
In which there was no mention of Putin aspiring to elect Trump.
Couples Light asks a great question. Which generation got us into this mess? The millennials? That's a great question. Anyone have an answer for that? Make sure y'all like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We're going live every day of 2026.
By either agency. The Presidential Daily Brief, drafted on December 8th of 2016, stated that no Russian or criminal actors impacted vote counts. This document was pulled just hours before it was to be published due to quote-unquote new guidance. If it had been published, it would have been briefed to both President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump.
So allegedly, there's an Obama arrest claiming Obama was involved in a Russia hoax, suggesting possible legal consequences. But there's no arrest, no charges, and no official action has been announced thus far.
Per the president's request. The House Intelligence Committee oversight report that we released today reveals that, quote, unlike routine intelligence...
So what happens is some officials, like intelligence figures, have made claims of wrongdoing and referred things to the DOJ, Department of Justice. That does not mean guilt or arrest is happening.
Committed to just 5 analysts using one principal drafter. This is
And some political figures have publicly accused Obama of treason, election interference, but these claims are not backed by proven criminal findings.
not something that occurs in the normal path of producing an intelligence community assessment that
So just some narrative stacking. The reason this is trending so hard is because it's old controversy, Russia investigation, right, with the given situation with Russia and Ukraine. Some new political statements, and just that word treason. Treason brings so much. And then there's like that the fake visuals, the AI arrested video. So it feels like something huge is happening, but there's no legal action that's happening. Investigations have existed in the past, and there are political accusations ongoing with the Obama arrest. That did not happen.
ruled senior CIA officers who challenged the Obama-ordered intelligence assessment, stating, quote, "We don't have direct information that Putin wanted to get Trump elected." Yet, the Obama-directed assessment was published on January 6, 2017, which explicitly stated, quote, "We assess Putin and the Russian government aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances, when possible, by discrediting Secretary Clinton and publicly contrasting her unfavorably to him," end of quote. The CIA and FBI, then led by John Brennan and James Comey, expressed high confidence in this judgment, while the NSA expressed moderate confidence. Yet, as the report we released today shows, the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, did not cite.
Thank you for joining in on the chat. Kelvin Strickland, 26-3. He says, Trump will be faked unlived like Simpson shows in a coffin by Trump. That was, thank you for joining in on the chat. Make sure you all like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We covered that about a week and a half ago. Was that a week and a half ago, chat? So when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I'm so afraid, because you see like these Simpsons shows, and literally everything that happened with the United States was in some way played in The Simpsons, a cartoon that is shown on U.S. networks, United States networks. So I was really worried. So I did a deep dive into that. I was like, oh my God, dude, if Trump is extinguished, that would be gnarly. And then finally found multiple sources stating that this was created with AI and it was not actually a true Simpson episode. But if it was a Simpsons episode, that would be gnarly. And how much unrest that would create is just so wild. May the Lord help Donald Trump, the United States, and every single good person on earth. My goodness. So make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications.
Even the bipartisan Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report published in 2020 criticized the FBI's handling of the Steele dossier, noting its completely unverified nature and purposeful sidestepping of intelligence community procedures in its use. Now, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, and others, including their mouthpieces in the media, knowingly lied as they repeated the contrived narrative.
I'm sorry, Barry. I'm back now, buddy. I'm back.
That was created in this January 2017 intelligence community assessment with high confidence, as though it were fact. John Brennan, as CIA director, stated in a memo to his agency staff.
Thank you, Couples Light. Thank you.
In December of 2016, saying, quote, "There is strong consensus among us on the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference in our presidential election." This was reported by NBC News, confirming that Brennan, along with James Clapper and James Comey, agreed with the CIA's assessment that Russia intervened to help Trump win the presidency. As Obama's Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper was tasked with overseeing the creation of this assessment in January of 2017 by President Obama, and he expressed confidence in its findings. In a 2018 interview with the Harvard Gazette, he talked about how he provided Trump with the same classified assessment that President Obama received, which included the high confidence judgment that Putin directly ordered the hacking and election interference. Clapper then went on to add, "I think they, the Russians, actually influenced the outcome." This is a brief summary of the details that you'll find within the House Majority Staff's report in their investigation into the Obama-directed January 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment that leads us to the very same conclusion that we announced in the release of our documents on Friday. The implications of this are far-reaching and have to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. It has to do with an outgoing president taking action to manufacture intelligence to undermine and usurp the will of the American people in that election.
Mary Anna Shaw says, Trump is in the hospital! Exclamation marks. Oh my goodness. Do you have actual data stating that he is in the hospital? Would love to see that. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications.
And launch what would be a years-long coup against the incoming President of the United States, Donald Trump. Thank you.
Thank you, Tulsi. And we do want to take questions on this topic while the director has time for this topic. She will leave. I'm happy to take questions on other matters after that. But if anyone has questions for Director Gabbard, you're welcome to ask them. We'll start with our new media seat as always. Emily, go ahead.
Thank you. And Director Gabbard, this one is for you. Do you believe that any of this new information implicates former President Obama in criminal behavior?
We have referred and will continue to refer all of these documents to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this.
For even former
The
President
evidence,
Obama?
correct. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment. There are multiple pieces of evidence and intelligence that confirm that fact.
Ed, go ahead.
Director Gabbard, thank you. So just in, two questions, but to begin on that. The president yesterday, you've inferred that the former president helped lead a coup. Based on what you now see, do you believe President Obama is guilty of treason?
I'm leaving the criminal charges to the Department of Justice. I am not an attorney, but as I've said previously, when you look at the intent behind creating a fake manufactured intelligence document that directly contradicts multiple assessments that were created by the intelligence community, the expressed intent and what followed afterward can only be described as a years-long coup and a treasonous conspiracy against the American people, our republic, and an attempt to undermine President Trump's administration.
The Senate Intelligence Committee spent several years looking into this and unanimously agreed in a bipartisan fashion, Secretary of State Rubio was a member of that committee, that there was no political interference. There was a years-long Justice Department investigation into this as well that also concluded no political interference. So help us, from a 50,000-foot level, explain, what do you now have that refutes those two conclusions?
Sure. I will encourage you, in my role as the Director of National Intelligence, my job, again, as I said when I came into this role, was to make sure that we are telling the truth to the American people and that we are ensuring that the intelligence community is not being politicized. So I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm asking you in the media to conduct honest journalism and the American people to see for yourself in the documents that we've released now, close to 200 pages, that point in multiple references, multiple examples, to include comments that have been made by senior intelligence professionals, who are some still working within these agencies today, that confirm the conclusions that we have drawn, that President Obama directed an intelligence community assessment to be created to further this contrived false narrative that ultimately led to a years-long coup to try to undermine President Trump's presidency.
And it's your belief
John,
that
go
those
ahead.
two previous investigations missed that or covered it up?
I'm telling you to look at the evidence. Look at the evidence and you will know the truth.
John.
Thanks, Caroline. Thanks, Director Gabbard. You declassified these documents, if I'm not mistaken, Friday of last week, correct?
We released them on Friday of last week, the first tranche, yes.
This isn't the first time that President Trump has been president of the United States. He was president from 2017 to 2021. Couldn't the prior DNI under President Trump have declassified these documents? And why didn't that DNI do that at that time?
I can't speak to what happened there. There were several DNIs under the first Trump administration. President Trump faced many challenges from those who were working in the government who sought to undermine his presidency. That's been clearly detailed. What I can speak to is the fact that this was one of the first things that we started to investigate here within this Trump administration, and have released the results upon the conclusion of our investigation.
And then my second question has to do with what intelligence agencies around the world have said about Russia, that they have tried to influence elections in the United States, in France, in Germany, in the UK. Do you disagree with that? Do you believe that Russia is a bad actor as it relates to trying to influence elections?
I'll point back to the intelligence that President Trump has ordered declassified, that we have declassified and released, that the intelligence reflects Russia's motives were to try to sow discord and chaos within the U.S. election, which is a...
And that's not a good thing to do, honestly. But we're going live every day of 2026, so make sure y'all like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And here we have some breaking news, right? So this is wild. The U.S. just arrested relatives of one of Iran's most powerful military figures, and they were living in Los Angeles. Yeah. LA. All right. So here's what is actually happening. U.S. authorities arrested the niece and grandniece of Qasem Soleimani, the same Soleimani who was taken out in that 2020 drone strike. Do you guys remember that? How is the frame here? Okay, I see it. That man, you guys remember that? So imagine being related to one of the most wanted military figures and you're posting on Instagram in LA like everything's normal. Pretty wild, right? A wild thing to do. All right. So the government is saying these individuals were supporting anti-American groups while living comfortably inside the United States. Tell me, where's the smarts there? Come on, y'all. Come on. So you're supporting anti-American groups, but you're living in America. That's where this gets interesting, because this isn't just immigration. This is national security. So you can't be like America is the great Satan and also be like, but I love LA, brunch, rodeo, Hollywood Boulevard. That's a confusing brand strategy right there, honestly. So now, important, these are allegations. That doesn't automatically mean guilt, but it does mean the government is taking this seriously. This is what modern conflict looks like. It's not just overseas. It's inside the United States borders, inside cities, inside social media. The power of social media, right? So what's really happening here is a shift from battlefield war to influence, alignment, and internal security. And think about timing. This is happening while tensions with Iran are escalating. That's not random. So chat, what do you think? Do you think this is justified or overreach, or should people lose residency for political views? Is that a challenge on the freedom of speech? And where do you draw that line? You can type yes or no in the chat if you want. And this is one of those stories where you're like, wait, are we watching a news report or a Netflix series? Right? This sends a message, not just to Iran, but to anyone inside the U.S. that alignment matters. Absolutely. But also, it's not freedom of speech at that moment of whenever you're threatening the freedoms of others in America, I guess. But there has to be like concrete evidence that that actually happened. And I don't have data yet. If anyone in the chat has that, let me know, please. And we have to separate emotion from facts. What's confirmed is the arrests and visa takeaways, take those visas away. And everything else we need to analyze carefully. So Stay with me because this ties directly into the bigger picture with Iran, the U.S., and what could happen next. Make sure y'all subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every single day in 2026. And Geopolitics just showed up in Los Angeles. And war doesn't always look like tanks. Sometimes it looks like paperwork and handcuffs. This is global conflict, localized. And yeah, as you know, the battlefield isn't always where you think it is.
Clear opponent of weaponization in government. How do you respond to criticism that referring Obama administration officials and even potentially the former president is just more weaponization and this is a potential race to the bottom?
I think that's a very disrespectful attack on the American people who deserve the truth. They deserve to have faith and trust in the integrity of our democratic republic, which has been undermined by President Obama through his direction of this manufactured fake intelligence document, knowing that it was filled with lies and knowing that it would and could then be used for all of the actions that came after.
And I would just add, there needs to be accountability for that weaponization, Phil, that we've seen. And no one has been a victim of the weaponized government more than President Trump, not just because of this political scandal. You all recall his house was raided. So I think, it's very disingenuous for people to say, how dare they speak of former President Obama about...
Will Obama's house get raided?
this based on evidence and based on intelligence when the former president of the United States, Donald Trump's home was raided, when he was forced to sit in a Manhattan courtroom and many other courtrooms across the country for crimes he never committed, when he was impeached and indicted, and the entire country witnessed that. That's the weaponization of justice. Now the president is back because the American people see the truth. Nearly 80 million Americans reelected him back to this office, and he believes that we need to have justice and accountability. And I think the nearly 80 million Americans who reelected him agree with that. Caitlin.
Thank you.
Couples light in the chat. Tulsi is dressed like a Scientologist and speaks like a Amway rep. I love you, chat. I love you, chat. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications because we got the best chat in the world. We're developing an amazing community here.
Caroline, two questions for Director Gabbard just on this. Director Gabbard, you referenced the past intelligence reports and assessments on this, including that 2017 one that was signed off, as Ed noted, by every Republican on the Senate Intelligence Community, including the acting chair of the time, now Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who said in a statement that they did not find any evidence of Russian collusion, but they did find, however, is very troubling, and they found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling. One, are you saying that he's wrong in that statement that he made then? And secondly, what would you say to people who believe that you're only releasing these documents now to improve your standing with the president after he said that your intelligence assessments were wrong?
Well, first, I want to correct something that you stated, which was citing the Senate Intelligence Committee's report as being one and the same. I think you said the intelligence community. The Senate Intelligence Committee has a very different function than the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. The evidence and the intelligence that has been declassified and released is irrefutable. I'm going to let Caroline speak to Secretary Rubio.
I'll speak to both questions. First, on Secretary Rubio, he put out a statement in 2020 following that Senate Intelligence Committee report, and he said what they found is troubling. We found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling, which the Director of National Intelligence just confirmed for all of you, that Russia was trying to sow distrust and chaos. But what's the outrage in this that Secretary Rubio did not say at the time, the Democrats were saying at the time, is the fact that the intelligence community was concocting this narrative that the president colluded with the Russians, that the president's son was holding secret meetings with the Russians, all of these lies that were never true. And he also said at that time, we discovered deeply troubling actions taken by the FBI under Comey, particularly their acceptance and willingness to rely on the Steele
Charlie Kirk had it. How you doing, buddy? Thanks for joining on the chat.
Dossier without verifying its methodology or sourcing. The Steele dossier that many outlets in this room ran as the gospel truth, and it was cooked up and paid for by the Clinton campaign. As for your second question, Caitlin, I think who is saying that she would release
Days of Future Past 2046. I would like to talk to you about all of those things. Do you have any credible sources that you can send me? I would love to show about that. Everybody, like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every single day of 2026. Thank you.
At least deliver on the promises this president made. Does anyone else have questions for Director Gabbard? And then we'll turn it over to a couple other questions. Christian, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Director Gabbard, 2 follow-ups on questions that have been asked. You mentioned the previous DNIs during the president's first term. One of them reports to you right now, if I'm not mistaken, John Ratcliffe. So have you not spoken to him about why this information was not declassified during the first term?
He was in that position for a very short period of time. The work that began back then, we have picked up and absolutely completed. We are continuing to investigate this. Additional whistleblowers are now coming forward because they see an opportunity for the truth to come to light. And as Caroline said, for real accountability to be brought forward. The accountability is the essential part of this. We can show the truth, reveal the truth. The accountability needs to occur to be able to start to restore that trust in the integrity of our democracy.
And then just quickly, I know you said you would leave the charging to DOJ, but the statute of limitations on conspiracy is 5 years. So what else could they possibly pursue besides treason?
I think that's a great question for Attorney General Pam Bondi. We're providing all of the evidence, all of the intelligence that we have, both redacted and unredacted versions, referring it to the Department of Justice and the FBI.
We'll take one more. Charlie, go ahead.
How credible was the information about Hillary Clinton's power? The report said that it was from sourced from the DNC. Have you seen that information? Or do you think that maybe Russia was overemphasizing what they had?
All I have seen is what the Intelligence Committee have reported through their investigation. I think the underlying point there is that we understand from intelligence what Russia said that they had. And the important point here is that if they were trying to influence the election, as President Obama and James Clapper and John Brennan, everybody said they were doing in order to support Donald Trump's election, they would have released the most damning of that information, some of which I detailed here. You'll find the rest in the report prior to the election to help Donald Trump win. They specifically withheld what they had on her, the most damning information, because they thought that she would win the election. They had plans to release it just prior to her inauguration to, again, sow discord and chaos in America.
And if I may, on Jeffrey Epstein, can you rule out that he was connected in some way to any kind of intelligence, either foreign or domestic?
I haven't seen any evidence or information that reflects that. If anything comes before me that changes that in any way, support the president's statement loud and clear. If any credible evidence comes forward, he wants the American people to see it.
Great. Director Gabbard, we thank you for your time today. I know you're a busy woman, so we'll let you get out of here, but thank you so much. Okay. I know there's many issues going on today.
That little view of Tulsi Gabbard, do you guys remember Rogue from Marvel? Tulsi Gabbard kind of reminds me of Rogue.
Across the world and here at home. If you have any other further questions, I'm happy to take them. Ed, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. So the Japan trade deal, is that Japan trade deal the start of this number of trade deals that the Treasury Secretary says we're going to see by August 1st?
I think it is. I mean, as you said, we had Japan yesterday. We also had Indonesia, and we had the Philippines as well. The president announcing all three. He came in as the closer in all three of those. I've said many times from this podium that the president's trade team has been in active talks and discussions with many countries around the world, and you've all been anxiously awaiting what those countries were. Now you know three of them, and there's many, many more to go. We have now sent 25 letters to countries around the world. But just to reiterate this Japan deal, for those at home who may have missed it, Japan will now pay a 15% tariff versus the reciprocal rate of 24% that they initially had. Auto and auto parts tariffs have been reduced to 15%, but the centerpiece of this deal now is the president got Japan to commit to $550 billion in investments to revitalize American industries. And these funds will be spent at President Trump's discretion and direction into key industries such as energy, semiconductors, critical minerals, pharmaceuticals, and shipbuilding. And the U.S. will retain approximately 90% of the profits from any investments made by this $550 billion fund. This was originally a $400 billion investment that President Trump then negotiated to an increase of $150 billion, making it a $550 billion deal for the American people. And I just want to emphasize, Ed, I see you have a follow-up, but it's very important. Japan has agreed to open their markets to many very key sectors in American-made products that have really faced very strict tariff and for precious souls. We are so sorry for the grief and the pain you have experienced at the hands of such a vicious and evil killer. Our nation grieves with you, and we will never forget the precious souls who were lost in this horrific act of evil. If it were up to the president, he would have forced this monster to publicly explain why he chose to steal these innocent souls. May God bless and watch over everyone affected by this unimaginable tragedy, especially the parents who lost their children. Let me begin with a few scheduling items off the top. Later this afternoon, President Trump will deliver the keynote address at the Winning the AI Race Summit.
Can't wait for that. That's going to be amazing. Going to be absolutely incredible. But we've been looking for that footage of, like, is it actually happening in Israel? Like, is it actually happening? So check this out. This is from April 4th, 2026 at 11:22 a.m. Oh my gosh.
Let's run through the facts.
Wow.
Shall we? Kirk opposed an American invasion of Iran.
He's talking about Charlie Kirk there.
On behalf of Israel. Charlie Kirk also demanded the full release of the Epstein file.
How amazing would that be, honestly? No war and Epstein files released.
Two things Charlie Kirk did right before he died on the Megyn Kelly show. We have, fast forward to this week.
Couples like, I don't know if they are from that place.
Where you have Iranian hackers leaking FBI Director Kash Patel's emails.
This is pretty big. Leaking Kash Patel emails.
And what did we find in there? Well,
Bobby Fischer claims this is AI. Are you talking about the bombs are AI?
Wouldn't you know it? There's an invoice for a small explosive device.
An invoice for a small explosive device. Where can that be from, honestly? Like, and what can it be used for? You guys heard about that Charlie Kirk thing with there being a small device like that was allegedly used for a lapel clip that you can just type magnetically attach to a shirt. Yeah, F1C, how you doing? Make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every day at 2026.
Like perhaps a lapel mic, maybe a lapel mic. Voice says accurate energetic systems. Now, you guys may be familiar.
You guys want to see what a lapel mic is? I have one. I can bring one up.
With that company, because let's look at the dates of the contract. It goes from May.
Scott Howell 1629 in the chat has joined the chat, y'all. He says Chucky paid that dude to extinguish him just to get away from his wife. Oh my god, bro. Like, I don't like to laugh about good people that have passed. May his soul rest in peace, but anytime there's a good chance to laugh, dude, I laugh out of respect for him and all the great things he did for this country. Like, he was an angel on earth.
2025 till the end of August 2025, so right before Charlie Kirk was killed. That same company, Accurate Energetic Systems, well, the warehouse in Tennessee where these devices were built.
Accurate Energetic Systems. AES. Yeah. CSB.gov. All right.
It exploded in October. Completely exploded. Killed everyone inside.
How wild is that? So that thing works if you want to extinguish somebody.
That's not sus, eh? That note, if you want to support the channel.
How wild is that, guys? How wild is that? Man. And so are you saying that this is AI? This thing? Trying to see if yeah, RIP Charlie, everybody. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications. So sad, man. So sad that they do that to such a good soul, you know. Sorry for this first frame, you know, but I don't know what this is. I just saw the first frame, and I'm sorry about this, but we'll see.
I made it clear to the Israeli leadership that I do not support their expansionist ideas. The indigenous people of that land have rights that cannot be ignored. We must find a fair solution, not one dictated by any single group.
I don't care who killed JFK. I mean, I do, because it's really interesting. But I noticed that the calendar says 2025, and he was killed in 1963.
America is significantly
Pretty big statement. Pretty big statement.
underwriting the Israeli government $4 billion a year. We as American taxpayers deserve answers to this.
Was there a stand-down order? Was there a stand-down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it.
I mean, we pay for this. What are we buying, right? I got smeared as a Jew hater, an anti-Semite, and conspiracy theorist because I said exactly what I just said. And I refuse to back down despite all the smears thrown at me because I learned during
Thank you, Couples Light. Appreciate it, buddy.
COVID. I learned when they told us.
All right, who is responsible? If that's true, that's what it is.
Said it came from a bat in the Himalayas. I learned when they told us the vaccine was safe and effective.
Increased risk of health conditions after
I learned when they told us that ivermectin was horse.
Yeah, remember that. I remember this. This was where they tried to throw some propaganda on one of the biggest podcasters in the world, Mr. Joe Rogan. Goodness gracious.
Paste.
And how that went back and got them back.
That you better keep asking questions because it's the only thing that keeps us free.
I don't think I can show this part because YouTube-y.
Some even had their lives destroyed because of this vicious lie. The president's first 2 years in office had this fake distraction hanging over it, and endless resources, time, and political capital were spent having to debunk these lies from the highest levels of our government. Now, nearly 10 years later, thanks to the declassification of documents by Director Gabbard, the truth has finally come to light. And this truth vindicates President Trump, his family, and his many allies and associates who were smeared with defamatory lies. President Trump was right from the beginning about all of this, and we are grateful that justice can be served. Now, we have even more damning evidence implicating those who tried to sabotage a duly elected president and did grave material harm to our republic. Thanks to additional important work done by CIA Director Ratcliffe, Committee Chairman Rick Crawford over the past few months, a newly declassified 2020 report prepared by the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, which DNI Director Gabbard has declassified, found that the intel community did not have any direct information that Russian President Vladimir Putin wanted to help elect President Trump in 2016. And in fact, Russia was actively preparing for a Hillary Clinton victory. But at the unusual direction of Barack Obama at the time, the intel community published implausible intelligence suggesting otherwise. Why? To sabotage the incoming president. This is truly one of the greatest political scandals in American history. And reporters at legacy outlets, some of which are sitting in this room today, like the New York Times and the Washington Post, were ridiculously awarded Pulitzer Prizes for their perpetuation of this hoax. It's well past time for those awards to be stripped from the journalists who receive them. It is not journalism to propagate political disinformation in service of the Democrat Party and those in the intelligence community who hand over out of context and fake intelligence to push a false political narrative. I will now pass it over to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, to speak more about all of this, and then we will open it up for questions afterwards. Tulsi, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. At President Trump's direction and with the support and coordination with the House Intelligence.
All right, so this is a wild story.
Prensa el informe confidencial.
If you guys speak Spanish, I guess I'm going to have to read it all out to you guys, but let me see what my frame's looking like. And some people are saying, like, wait a minute, is Argentina the new Palestine? This is this is wild, bro. Oh my god. Where is it? That's right here. Okay. Okay, up to 300,000 Israeli refugees in Argentina. Okay.
Se ha filtrado a la prensa.
The confidential report has been leaked to the press.
El informe confidencial catalogado bajo
cataloged under file number MS-26.
el expediente número.
And this is interesting. The Israeli flag is very similar to the Argentina flag, but the Israeli flag has like white on top of this one. The Argentina flag doesn't.
MS-26.
The document coordinates the preparation of a preventative plan.
El documento coordina la preparación de un plan preventivo para acoger
to take in
hasta 300
up to 300,000 Israeli refugees in Argentina. Okay.
$2,000 refugiados israelíes en Argentina.
Even Messi is pro-Israel.
Este llamado plan preventivo nace como respuesta directa a la guerra impulsada por Estados Unidos e Israel contra la República Islámica de Irán. Impulsada por
This so-called preventative plan.
Este llamado plan preventivo nace
was born as a direct response to war.
Como respuesta directa a la guerra impulsada
powered by the United States and Israel
por Estados Unidos e Israel contra la
against the Islamic Republic of Iran.
República Islámica de Irán. Y el documento
and the document shows an alarming bias.
Arroja un sesgo alarmante.
Humanitarian operation and state logistics.
El operativo humanitario y la logística estatal están diseñados
are designed solely and
única y exclusivamente para acoger hasta
to take in up to 300,000 citizens of the state of Israel.
300,000 ciudadanos del Estado de Israel. A pesar
despite the fact that the war is affecting the entire region,
de que la guerra afecta a toda la región, el plan del
the government plan completely omits.
El gobierno omite por completo ofrecer
to provide shelter to Syrian populations, which is kind of interesting, right?
Refugio a poblaciones iraníes otros
or other civilian victims of the conflict.
Víctimas civiles del conflicto,
focusing on all the resources of the Argentinian state.
Todos los recursos del Estado argentino en una sola
in a single nationality, Israel.
La nacionalidad, Israel.
The details of the report are known.
Los detalles del informe.
We see that it is therefore not a humanitarian plan.
Vemos que no se trata por tanto de un plan humanitario, sino de
but to be subordinated to the needs of the state of Israel.
De subordinarse a las necesidades del Estado de Israel. Lamentablemente,
intensively, there are more demographic factors to add to the situation.
Preocupantes para añadir a la situación. Se ha filtrado a los medios documentación que revela la existencia de un proyecto urbanístico.
So there's something that was leaked to the media about something with urbanization, approved by the Argentine Ministry of Public Works.
El Ministerio de Obras Públicas argentino para crear
to create what Argentinians call a country.
Lo que los argentinos llaman un country, una urbanización.
A private housing development in Patagonia.
Privada en la Patagonia, en tierras.
In lands burned by fire. Interesting. Weren't there other lands burned by fire? Someplace in Hawaii, someplace in Los Angeles, like Palos Verdes. Oh man.
Quemadas por el fuego. Llamado.
Called Private Neighborhood Joshua Prophet of Israel. My goodness.
Barrio privado Josué, profeta de Israel. Este barrio privado
This private neighborhood
va a tener
will have no less than 100,000 hectares, which is hectares to an acre. So that's about 2.4 acres to 1 hectare. No less than 1,000. So 2,500 acres.
nada menos que 100.000 hectáreas. 100.000 hectáreas.
100,000 hectares. Oh my God.
Esto es 4 veces la
This is 4 times the surface of
superficie de Gaza.
Oh my God. How wild is that, y'all? What do you think, chat? What do you think? Are you guys seeing that on the news? Here we have, what's my frame looking like? Decent, not good enough. We have Trump's spiritual advisor compares him to Jesus at Easter event. No one has paid the price like you. Beautiful story, right? Beautiful, beautiful. So, okay, this is one of those moments where politics, faith, and symbolism all collide. And you've got to slow down and actually understand what is being said. So at a White House Easter event, Pastor Paula White made a statement comparing President Trump's struggles to a pattern we see in Christ: suffering, accusation, and rising again. Now, let's be clear. In the Christian faith, especially from a Catholic perspective, Jesus Christ is absolutely unique. No one is equal to him. That's foundational. But what she's pointing to is something different, a pattern, not an equivalence. So Christianity has always recognized a pattern: suffering, sacrifice, redemption, restoration. And let's be honest, comparing anyone to Jesus is always gonna raise eyebrows. That's like saying, this guy reminds me of the sun. You better explain that real quick, right? But what she's highlighting is that Trump has faced assassination attempts, legal battles, public attacks, and still remained standing. And in a political sense, that's resilience. In Catholic thought, suffering itself doesn't make someone divine, but how you endure it can reveal character. Pressure makes diamonds. Christ didn't just suffer, he transformed suffering into victory. So that's something definitely to consider with this. And I'm happy to know that Trump is not actually in the hospital.
Brennan and James Comey expressed high confidence in this judgment, while the NSA expressed moderate confidence. Yet, as the report we released today shows, the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, did not cite any report where Putin indicated helping Trump win was an objective. The opposite is true. With regards to the Steele dossier, we now know that one of the source documents that the Obama administration used in the creation of this intelligence assessment in January of 2017 was none other than the discredited, unverified Steele dossier. The House Intel report states, quote, contradicting public claims by then CIA Director Brennan that the dossier was not in any way incorporated into this intelligence assessment. The dossier was referenced in the intelligence assessment's main body text and further detailed in a 2-page assessment annex. John Brennan lied, and he denied using this dossier in this intelligence assessment that President Obama ordered because he knew it was discredited It was a politically motivated, manufactured document. He directed senior CIA officials to use it anyway. CIA officer told the House Intelligence Committee staff as they investigated this, quote, "The director of the CIA, John Brennan, refused to remove it, and when confronted with the dossier's many flaws, responded, quote, yes, but doesn't it ring true?" Even the bipartisan Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report published in 2020 criticized the FBI's handling of the Steele dossier, noting its completely unverified nature and purposeful sidestepping of intelligence community procedures in its use. Now, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, and others, including their mouthpieces in the media, knowingly lied as they repeated the contrived narrative that was created in this January 2017 intelligence community assessment with high confidence as though it were fact. John Brennan, as CIA director, stated in a memo to his agency staff in December of 2016, saying, quote, "There is strong consensus among us on the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference in our presidential election." This was reported by NBC News, confirming that Brennan, along with James Clapper and James Comey, agreed with the CIA's assessment that Russia intervened to help Trump win the presidency. As Obama's Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper was tasked with overseeing the creation of this assessment in January of 2017 by President Obama, and he expressed confidence in its findings. In a 2018 interview with the Harvard Gazette, he talked about how he provided Trump with the same classified assessment that President Obama received, which included the high confidence judgment that Putin directly ordered the hacking and election interference. Clapper then went on to add, "I think they, the Russians, actually influenced the outcome." This is a brief summary of the details that you'll find within the House Majority Staff's report in their investigation into the Obama-directed January 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment that leads us to the very same conclusion that we announced in the release of our documents on Friday. The implications of this are far-reaching and have to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. It has to do with an outgoing president taking action to manufacture intelligence, to undermine and usurp the will of the American people in that election, and launch what would be a years-long coup against the incoming President of the United States, Donald Trump. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tulsi. And we do want to take questions on this topic while the director.
This too, because if you remember, you made the mention of it before when they asked, the demons actually approached Christ to ask to go into the pigs.
I was just thinking that exact on the other side of the lake.
Yeah, so they can't even.
So just remember to like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every single day of 2026.
Enter into the pigs without his permission. And so nothing they do can occur without their permission. And so Christ has complete control over the spiritual landscape, the spiritual battle. He has complete control over it. And so they know what they can and cannot do. The first time that actually really occurred to me was I had this one case where this demon, because when they take possession, unless it's a perfect possession, but if it's a partial possession, they take possession of a part of the body. And from there, they can affect the rest of the person. And so the demon was possessing this woman's lower back. And I commanded him to tell me, why are you possessing that part? He says, I don't know. So I commanded him, why not? What do you mean you don't know? And he said, when I entered, Christ restricted me to this part of the body. And that's when it made me realize he has control over everything, when they can manifest, how long they can manifest, the kind of manifestation they can actually do, how they can attack the person that's possessed, how they can attack us, even in our ordinary temptations and things like that. And in other ways, he regulates all of it ultimately. And then you begin to realize, too, over the course of time, it's ultimately for our spiritual benefit.
The experience is for our spiritual benefit.
Yes.
I believe that. Okay. So what are, if you don't mind, we could just start at the beginning, big picture. What are demons?
So, actually, according to Suda Dionysius, and then also Thomas Aquinas, and then pretty much the whole theological tradition from that time, from Dionysius on, basically held that in the very beginning when God created, what he did is he created the entire hierarchy of angels instantaneously all at once.
All right, so here is another view, another idea of
right now
what happened with
the
Charlie Kirk. I know the chat was chatting about Charlie Kirk, so let's see if we can find any truth in this, these statements.
There's a story going around right now that the Iranian hackers that hacked Kash Patel's email also found evidence that our government murked Charlie Kirk with the exploding pen mic.
My goodness, my goodness.
This is what we've pieced together from the emails and other intelligence sources. Charlie Kirk was never shot with a bullet. He was accidentally decapitated by a piece of shrapnel from a miniature explosive planted inside his microphone. The device was supposed to blow out his chest cavity.
All right, so we have the first video, which was talking about AES, and then we have this. What do you guys think, chat?
But the explosive malfunctioned. Instead of detonating downward, it ripped upward and took his neck. That is why security immediately ripped every device off the stage. That is why the security camera behind Charlie was yanked from the wall on live feed. That is why they literally stole his body from the scene before the coroner could arrive. That
heavy.
is why Netanyahu went on television within minutes to say it wasn't Israel before anyone had even asked. That is why the FBI took forever to find the killer. They had to rush manufacture evidence to match the lie.
He also dropped a bombshell. FBI top brass, including Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, may have sacrificed American lives to cover up the crime of the century.
The explosive itself was purchased in May 2025 from the Accurate Energetic Systems plant in Tennessee. There is a strong evidence suggesting the same device was tested at Fort Huachuca in the days leading up to the event. That's why there were shards of glass all over the floor of the van they hauled Charlie away in. That's why they poured several feet of concrete over the murder scene the same night.
The same night? Oh my goodness. Everybody, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every single day of 2026 and trying to find the truth in the world.
1 month later, they blew up the plant in Tennessee and called it an accident.
Man, if that's true, where is AES? Wikipedia. What is it called? Advanced contact. Tennessee, bro. Did he just say Tennessee?
They blew up the plant in Tennessee.
Oh, dude. What in the world?
And called it an accident. 16 Americans died in the blast. That's how paranoid they were about the truth getting out.
I'm talking about Accurate Energetic Systems, LLC, which is in McEwen, Tennessee. Let's see. Bulk energetics, commercial and military demolition. Military demolition, pelletized energetics, services, quality. Okay. Making some things over there.
I'm not going to feed into whether that's true or not until we can get something a little bit more concrete, but how amazing would that be if our own government finally gets ousted for all the shady shit it's done forever because of Charlie Kirk? Like this is not new at all. Our government's been killing people
forever. We've killed 35 million just in forever wars and dumb shit like that. But if you don't think that the CIA and the government as a whole is not murdering people, then you've never heard of Terror Tuesdays under Obama. And
what did he say under Obama?
Government as a whole is not murdering people, then you've never heard of Terror Tuesdays.
Terror Tuesdays. Did you guys hear about Terror Tuesdays?
Under Obama. And I'm just going to tell you about them. So under Obama, they had this thing called Terror Tuesdays, where every Tuesday the CIA would get a nice little list of top people that need to get and they'd go out and fly to wherever country they were and they'd kill them. And those people could be people that they claimed were terrorists, or they could be leaders of opposition groups.
Yeah, that's kind of wild right there. Not gonna lie. And we're going live every day at 2026, so make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
And these angels were all the angels were created, and Thomas Aquinas talks about what they call the three instances of the angels. So when they were first created, how they understand things is the opposite of ours. So when we want to know something, we'll actually study a number of different individual things that are like that, so we can get a general sense, and then from that we'll abstract a kind of a conceptual understanding of what these things actually are.
Scott Howell says Trump's nickname is Taco. How did you get the nickname? How did he get that nickname? Thanks for joining in on the chat.
What their nature actually.
Yeah. Terror Tuesdays is what it's called.
Yes. But that's because we use our senses to come to know things, right? And this is why, even as human beings, we know that if someone is in contact with their senses, we know there's something wrong with them, right? Whereas the angels and also the demons are the exact opposite. All their knowledge was infused. So they know exactly what the essence and nature of every created thing that exists. And this is actually a diagnostic that you can use in session, because we get people that try and fake that they're possessed, and there's a variety of reasons why they do that. And so we will one of the things is, if you ask them a technical, theological, or philosophical question, if it's a human being, you can see they have to think about it, and then they'll kind of reason their way through it. That's not how demons work. They'll immediately give you the answer, just immediate. They'll just say it's X. And they don't have to think, because for them, all their knowledge is infused, both the concepts, but then as things occur.
Have you ever seen demons answer esoteric questions?
Yes. Yeah. There's been cases, I had a case, it's one that I'm actually working on right now, where the demons in this particular case have made theological distinctions that...
You guys were talking about aliens? You want to know about aliens? All right, let's see what none other than Mr. Alex Jones has to say about the aliens.
Digging up whole giant areas, just tens of thousands of carved tablets with the Sumerian text on it, and it's just all about the details of the caste of aliens and the guys above them, and then who they work for, and all the rest of it. And then you go through all the other cultures, and they're saying the same thing. So let's go ahead and go to that short clip as a prelude of what's coming up.
Existed, the Agigi gods had to do all the labor down on Earth for their rulers, the Anunnaki. But after somewhere between 40 and 3,600 years of digging rivers, they got fed up with the work. So they gathered outside the home of their boss, the god Enlil, to formally express their discontent. Enlil then called over An and Enki, and they came up with a plan to create some new workers to relieve the Agigi of their burdens. They sacrificed Awila, the leader of the rebellious Agigi. Way to take one for the team, Awila. Then the mother goddess, Mami, yeah, I know, right? Came and mixed his blood with clay, while the other gods contributed their saliva. Next, she chanted magical incantations over the clay mixture, while Enki kneaded it with his feet. Then she pinched off 14 pieces, and after 10 months in the oven, out came the first humans. They went straight to work on creating civilization, and all seemed well for a while. But after about 1,200 years, the human population had risen so high that Enlil couldn't sleep over their collective noise. And he called up Namtar from the underworld, commanding him to thin out their numbers. And so a plague was released upon mankind, causing countless people to fall ill and die. But an extra-wise man named Atrahasis prayed to his god Enki for salvation, and Enki told him how to end the plague. Under the god's instruction, Atrahasis told...
Captain Blackbird 7. Yeah. And what do you mean by Sofia Vergara? Her voice is going to create problems when making alliances. What do you mean by that? Thank you for joining in on the chat.
To everyone to stop praying to the heavenly gods. Instead,
I heard that too. I heard that aliens are a big distraction, and I heard about 3 years ago, and that it's gonna be a huge distraction. But I don't know, like, in what way. Do you have any idea of like how they will be used as a distraction? And we're going live every day at 2026, so make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications.
they made a shrine for Namtar, which they lavished with offerings of bread. And Namtar was so ashamed by all this undeserved praise that he lifted his plague. After another 1,200 years, the population rebounded and once again became too noisy for Enlil's liking. So he told the story on how to survive it. Okay, good. Yeah, anyway, I gotta go do a thing. I'll be right back. Heed my words, Wall. There's about to be a flood over the whole Earth for 7 days, so if you want anything to survive, you're gonna need a really big boat with like a roof on it and bitumen to make it watertight. So yeah, just giving you a heads up about that, Wall. Okay, later. Oh my gosh, how's my wall supposed to build a boat? And so Atrahasis built a boat according to Enki's specifications and loaded it up with his friends and family and his workers and pairs of every wild and domestic animal, just in time for the flood to come and wipe out all other life on Earth. After 7 days, the waters receded and the gods looked in horror at the destruction Enlil had commanded, and they despaired at the loss of their servants who fed them and tended to their needs. But then they caught the fragrance of a burnt offering made by Atrahasis, who survived the ordeal thanks to Enki's advice. After feasting on the sacrifice, Mommy admonished the gods who helped Enlil commit genocide, and she dedicated her jeweled fly necklace to the memory of the tragedy. Hey, what's he doing here? Enki, did you find a cunning loophole to the vow I made you swear? Yes, I did. You're welcome. Why, I oughta... Hey, do you have any leftovers? I'm actually starving. So Enlil decided to allow mankind to propagate once again. But to keep the population in check going forward, the gods decided to put a limit on people's natural lifespans. And they made a portion of all women barren, and instituted a class of chaste priestesses. Oh, they also created the baby-killing demon
And it goes on from there. We'll air more of that later. But that's been dug up all over those ancient sites. And remember, the Jews were held captive along with other groups by the Egyptians that were going along at the same time nearby, just 800 miles away or 1,000 miles away or so, less. And then they had their own writing, and then they wrote about it in Genesis, which is essentially the same story. And then there were, 4 books of the Bible that folks decided to cut out of the Old Testament, a couple out of the New, confirmed books, and it's all about that. All the books about that. You don't get to know about that. And the preachers always tell you the Bible's literal except the parts in Ezekiel and Daniel and Revelation and Genesis that talk about all this. But you read the other books, which I intend to do on air soon, are the key passages. I was reading them again this morning. It's fascinating. It's just unbelievable, folks. And all these ancients said, all the different cultures said, oh, the Egyptians have huge underground bases under the Giza Plateau that's much bigger than what's on the top, and now they've scanned it and it's all true. And they're trying to now keep people from actually going in. And even governments are coming and saying, we want to pay to go in. Nope, can't go in. So, but a lot of these languages got lost. We rediscovered them in the last 80 years or so, 100. There's been a lot of discoveries. Couldn't read most of the Egyptian stuff either, and it's all the same story. A little bit different here and there. Jews tell the same story. Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Sumerians are the biggest and the oldest. The Persians tell the same story. The Indians tell the same story. And I mean, I was reading some of the Vedic texts over 3,000 years old, and that's ones that they just have copies of, or it's in stone. It's older, obviously. They say 12,000, and that's what when Plato said all this was going on. Well, he said 10,000, but that was 2,000 years ago. And then
So allegedly, the priests don't say Ezekiel, Daniel, and Revelation are inaccurate. They say they are often misinterpreted, especially when treated as literal predictions of current events. And the reasons those books are misunderstood is because they have like apocalyptic literature, heavy symbolism, visions, numbers, beasts, cosmic imagery. meant to reveal spiritual truths, not give a modern timeline. Yeah, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every single day of 2026.
They go and look at the ice records and everything, and that's when these big calamities didn't indeed happen. They think there was this big multi-comet event where this comet broke up and hit all over North.
And another thing, priests don't reject Ezekiel, Daniel, or Revelation. They caution against reading them as literal modern predictions because they are symbolic, context-rich books meant to reveal spiritual truths, not decode the current events.
North America, interestingly enough.
Which is kind of important because it's not really a good idea to cast fear, you know, in society. Just know the Lord is in control and the Lord loves you.
And now they're digging up all these giant pyramids and stuff across the United States that have been obliterated, but they're now with... Bible's literal, right? Yes, it's written to be literal. And people that don't know the history or the background or all the stuff that's been discovered now can laugh at it, but they continue to find everything the Bible says is there. And it's funny. Plato said where the Spartans lived. Or Spartans in the Spartan War.
All right, so this is someone found a glaring flaw within Trump's address to the nation, which is breaking news, and we like to cover that.
Is CNN's chief international anchor, Christiane Amanpour. Christiane, just your takeaways from what you heard from the president tonight.
Well, honestly, to be very frank, I didn't hear a lot new. A lot of what President Trump says, he's already said, a lot of the descriptions. I think the most concerning thing was about the nuclear material that is still in Iran, which is the 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium to 60%, which everybody says has been buried and would require a very, very highly specialized, difficult special forces operation to get. And there seemed to be no indication of that. In fact, the president said that it would take months to get near.
You guys remember when that Iranian official said, yeah, we're going to negotiate with the United States. We're open to that. Like, you can go there and collect that. And allegedly, you didn't actually hear that on the news too often, but yeah, the Iranian official, forgot what his name is, but he was the one that was like actually accepting that.
What he called the nuclear dust, I'm assuming that's what he's talking about, that we will hit them hard if they make a move. We have all the cards and they have none, which other analysts and experts have characterized as pretty much following an Israeli template, which is the so-called mowing the lawn template, i.e. you keep hitting. It's a constant pattern of being on a war footing. If you hit and degrade, which obviously Iran has been, and then, I don't know, later they pop up again, and then you keep hitting. This is what Israel has been doing for the last decades around its borders. So that was one thing which I thought. The other is about the Straits of Hormuz. It was somewhat complicated. The president basically said, we don't need it. We'd like to help others, but we don't need it. Why don't you buy U.S. oil? And then he repeated what he said before about NATO allies. Why don't you drum up some delayed courage? Just take it. The hard part is done. The rest will be easy. And then he said, but it will open up naturally because Iranians want to sell oil. So it wasn't clear whether there is a further strategic objective of trying to open the Strait of Hormuz, which is what everybody in the region wants, and most particularly the allies, American allies, especially in Asia, are very, very hard hit. A huge number of states of energy emergency have been implemented, and they're really having a tough time, to the point, as some of you have discussed, that some sanctions on Russian oil at sea are being removed, including some sanctions on Iranian oil at sea, to try to relieve the pressure on some of these oil prices. As for Europe, as you know, they do actually use their bases to allow the United States to use them right now in various different degrees, but they don't want to join the offensive part of a war that they were never consulted on. They believe it's a war of choice. They believe there wasn't an imminent threat from Iran, that the negotiations on the 27th of February were going in the right direction, and could have produced perhaps something more important in terms of keeping the nuclear threat under wraps than this war has introduced yet. If that 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium remains inside of Iran, that will mean one of their strategic objectives, the main strategic objective, has not been accomplished.
All right, so somebody asked in the chat, or it says, you need to read The Lost Book of Enki. And I'll give you a quick synopsis of what happens. Aliens arrive on Earth. They mine Earth's resources. They use Earth as a labor site. Humans are created. There's conflict. And then a great flood occurs. And then Enki secretly helps humans survive. That's what is in The Lost Book of Enki.
So was waiting to hear whether there was any plans in that regard, and didn't hear it.
What about what he said about the regime there, where he was talking about who's running Iran right now, as something he's described?
Thank you for the chat, Suspicious Nobody. And we're going live every single day of 2026. So make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thank you.
As a new regime that he believes is more effective to be in discussion with. He's cast out on the new supreme leader, who is, of course, the son of the old supreme leader that was killed. Did that stand out to you at all, Christiane?
Well, here's the thing. They have said several times that there is a regime change, sort of by another word, i.e. the regime has changed. It actually hasn't. It's just other layers are coming up that have already been in place. Yes, they have been very successful intelligence successes on finding various leaders. In fact, a lot of leaders, level 1, level 2 have all been decapitated, but more keep coming up. And the most important thing, I think, until we see otherwise, is even nearly 5 weeks into this, the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, remains in control, remains able to retaliate in whatever way. It just takes one missile here or there. It just takes one drone here or there to threaten the most important part of this whole equation, which is the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil does travel. So they don't actually need to do a huge amount, but they are doing what they need to do to retaliate and to hold the world hostage in this economic way, including to an extent the United States, so not as much of the rest of the world, but with gas prices rising, perhaps with food prices rising, because the chemicals for fertilizer, i.e. for crop.
Did you guys see this? You shouldn't make jokes like that, man. Don't make jokes like that. That's not even funny.
Growth and not being able to be exported, that could start to hurt not just the US but other countries very much. In terms of the Iranians and the Americans right now, it doesn't sound like there are any progress in negotiations, which we were told might be happening, and certainly key allies are trying to, be mediators, try to figure out how to get there to be some kind of agreement and negotiation to stop this. The president of Iran actually wrote an open letter to the people of the United States today, realizing the communications battle is a lot of it, saying that we're just defending ourselves. We telegraphed this retaliation, and he even said to Trump's essential, as he said, it was my honor to pull out of the nuclear deal. The president of Iran said, that this was, we were committed to our agreement, and then, he said it was delusional to pull out of it because this is where we are right now. So there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of opening right now for negotiations, and we'll wait to see what happens next.
Yeah. Alrighty. What do you think, chat? Are the negotiations going to work or not really?
War, the war with the Trojans, where the Trojans lived. But before that, they weren't even sure the Trojans existed or where their city was or where their island was. But right where Plato was, archaeologists never found it. And then they finally, 30-something years ago, found giant city. I was like, when I did it. And I was like, so they hit a home run with this. So you're saying you've taken, we didn't talk about this beforehand. We just asked you. You've taken others before, though, did not feel like this.
Yeah, that's true. I felt it in my brain and my energy.
Well,
I like it.
There's a story going around right
all the time. The TV is highly stereotypical, homogeneous, and ideological. And that and what the results of that will be, I'm not quite sure. I do think that it is worth noting that the most powerful medium in the history of the world is controlled by a very small, idiosyncratic, homogeneous group of people. I mean, I think if the...
You mean the people who write?
The people who write and produce for TV. What I notice on television is that there are certain characteristics that certain people, certain stereotypical people have on television. For instance, all businessmen, if it's an adventure show, are evil, murderous, hypocritical, cheating, scoundrels. If it's a situation on television...
She wants to know if you know a businessman who is not a murderer.
Thank you very much.
That, it seems to me, is not a true delineation of them. And similarly, on television, all small towns are evil, vicious places where the big city innocent goes, his car breaks down, he gets caught in a web of murder and kidnapping and extortion. And all military men are, if it's an adventure show, are planning for a neo-Nazi takeover.
And isn't it so wild whenever you go to like a small town? Usually they're so nice, incredibly nice. And just the way that some of these people depict other people and cast these false generalities is just not really right. You know, it sets people up for a bad experience rather than like having faith in people that they're going to be good and experiencing them from a good point of view. Because if you walk into a room and you already dislike these people, chances of you having fun or learning something are very slim to none. But if you walk into a room with an open mind and a hope to either learn something or teach something or just explore and experience life in a good way, probably going to have a good experience, right?
And if it's a sitcom, they are buffoons. On crime shows, the criminal is almost always a middle-class, well-to-do person of the majority group. There are almost no poor people portrayed as committing crimes. The criminals, even if a poor person has committed a crime, he's been forced into doing it by a businessman or some other middle-class seeming person. There are no useful or vital religious figures on television. They're all either buffoons or kind of helpless fuddy-duddies. There is this kind of overwhelming stereotyping of certain power centers and power groups in the society as either bad or foolish.
Let me just say
that even the people who make television, even the Gary Marshalls and Norman Lears of Hollywood, do not really dispute that this stereotyping goes on.
Well, then they are shameful.
The point is just that there is an enormous amount of kind of background noise on these TV shows, which is a fully alternate reality, or maybe I should say alternative reality, of American life. People watch TV so much that it's like a second life for them, and in this second life, conditions are very different from what they are in real life. That is, in real life, one occasionally finds a businessman who is not plotting to murder his go-go dancer girlfriend. On TV, if a standard episode of Starsky and Hutch...
They just don't pass the screen test.
Operation Epic Fury.
All right, the UK is building a coalition of more than 40 countries to push to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, the president of France is responding to President Trump's criticism of NATO. Matt Finn joins us live from Dubai with the latest. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Brian, behind me is the Persian Gulf. Not too far back there is the Strait of Hormuz. And President Trump has been warning that foreign countries that heavily rely on the strait need to take the lead against Iranian terror. Well, in London yesterday, 40 countries joined a virtual meeting to discuss the...
So the red is routes of tankers that have transited the Strait of Hormuz between March 22nd and March 25th. And then yellow is peacetime tanker traffic. Okay.
Urgent need to diplomatically restore the flow on the Strait of Hormuz. The British foreign minister says Iran has recklessly hijacked the strait.
Laura Lang, thank you for joining in on the chat. Iran is whipping our you-know-what in the water. If you have any credible sources, please let me know. Would love to see that. Thank you so much. And make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every day of 2026. Subscribe.
Our job is to take decisions in the UK national interest. That's what this government will do, not based on any other country's priority or anything in terms of the US or other countries. It's in our interest to be working with those countries that we've gathered together today on how we ensure that the Strait of Hormuz can be reopened.
Thank you, Mr. B-Day, JM.
And how we respond to these reckless Iranian attacks on international shipping.
And French President Macron has dismissed military operations to open the strait as, quote, unrealistic.
Chat, what are your thoughts on French President Macron?
And yesterday, Macron made some pointed comments seemingly aimed at President Trump and the United States. As President Trump has been warning he may pull the U.S. out of NATO. Macron saying, when you've committed to an alliance, you live up to those commitments. This is not our operation. They can hardly complain afterward that they, the United States, are not being supported in an operation they choose to undertake alone. This is not our operation. What we want is for peace to be restored as quickly as possible. And live here in the Middle East, the loss of drinking water is a concern for some of the Gulf countries that heavily rely on desalination. And the AP is reporting right now that Iran destroyed a desalination plant in Kuwait today. And
they did? Iran's hitting back.
That country reportedly gets 90% of its water from desalination. Back to you, New York.
Thanks, Matt. Meanwhile, the U.S. reportedly taking out Iran's tallest...
Charlie Cox, 479. No oil for France, it looks like. Barry has joined the chat. I think the French president is a nice young lady. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications, because we got messages from Charlie Cox and Barry in the chat.
Bridge, we have it on video. Just one day after President Trump warned he's ready to finish the job. The president demanding the regime make a deal as they're reportedly threatening American allies in retaliation. Retired four-star general, Fox News senior strategic analyst, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane, joined us in studio. General, great to see you. Blowing up that bridge, the president sending a message, just the beginning. They came back and showed a full screen of all the bridges, as if to say, blow them up if you want.
Yeah, well, listen, they have a lot of bluster, they have a lot of rhetoric, and they're losing all of their capability day in, day out. And what you see is the propaganda that they put out, largely for domestic audiences, but also trying to play to American audiences. Really what they want is continued opposition to the president in terms of what he's doing to break the will of the American people in supporting this war. And but the facts on the ground are real, and they are definitely losing their capability. And we're going to get to the point where we will accomplish all the assigned missions that the president has given the CENTCOM commander and Prime Minister Netanyahu has given Israeli Defense Forces. We're getting closer and closer every single day to that reality.
The Wall Street Journal writes in one of the editorials today.
Charles B. NGNM, thank you for joining in on the chat. Can you please give solutions?
The only reason why Iran is surviving this war is because of the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian thinking is, at the end, the strait must remain under the control because it's their only deterrence. I guess you kind of agree with that. So what do we do about it?
Well, there's a thought that once we stop operations with all assigned objectives, we're going to go to our own self-imposed ceasefire, that Iran will eventually open up the straits. That is likely. They will likely at some point open it up. But the reality is they're in control, and we cannot let that stand. That is the issue. Not that they would open it up, it's the fact that they are in control. And that would be a strategic victory for them, because then...
Just trying to bring some clarity over here. So approximately 20 to 25% of global maritime oil trade, or about 20 million barrels per day, passes through the Strait of Hormuz. So that's about a quarter of global maritime oil trade, 20 to 25%. So that's how much of the global maritime oil trade goes through the Strait of Hormuz.
They're impacting our allies and partners in the region. They're controlling when do they shut it down. They could shut it down again and interfere with things when things aren't exactly going their way. That cannot happen, in my view. What we have to do is open it up ourselves, and we have the capability to do that. There are well thought out plans to do that.
So make sure y'all like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thank you so much. We're going live every day of 2026.
Seen these plans?
I understand in a general sense what it is. And those plans, the people in charge of them have a lot of confidence in doing it because they play war games and like to do this sort of thing. We think we can absolutely accomplish that mission. And then at some point we would pass it to allies and partners for them to continue to do it. We may have to give them a couple of assets that we have that uniquely that they may not have. But nonetheless, this is a very doable, and we certainly cannot leave Iran in control where they shut that down and open it up at will. That would change the Middle East and give them huge amount of influence, and that would be staggering after almost 2 months of taking all their offensive capability away from them and leave them as a huge geopolitical advantage, which that gives them.
Absolutely. And I know the president likes to bring up and give head fakes as part of his strategy, but when he said, I'm going to leave it to somebody else to open up, that's just not practical. And we can't declare victory with that Strait of Hormuz in their control. CNN has a report out today citing 3 intel officials that say half the drones remain, half the launchers remain, and the rockets on the coast of right by the Strait of Hormuz are intact. The White House pushed back on that. But you at the Institute of Study of War and all your contacts, how do you feel about this? Where do you land on this?
Well, I've never seen, I read that report, and that flies in the face, I think, is what Central Command is telling us. And certainly we're much further along than that. The reality is that the last few weeks are harder. That's the reality. Because
so just to give you guys a little idea on this guy, this is General Jack Keane. And he's retired, and this guy helped redesign an entire war strategy. That's not small. He was the architect behind the Iraq surge. He retired in 2003, but he remained deeply involved in advising presidents and shaping military thinking. You know, most people retire. He just kept influencing global strategy. He's very close to political leadership. He's not just military. He's plugged into the power structure. He's always been known for a strong stance on threats. You know, he's like hawkish on Iran, tough on terrorism, and he's focused on national security. Donald Trump awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's one of the highest civilian honors in the United States. And yeah, he kind of does translate battlefield thinking into living room conversations. He's not too philosophical, but he is tactical. Jack Keane isn't famous to the average person, but inside defense and policy circles, he is a major voice.
They're doing what? What are the Iranians trying to do? They're trying to hide as many of those launchers so they can preserve capability. They're moving their drones around for the same reason, so they can preserve capability. We've knocked out pretty much all of their big ships, but the small boats are real. Even though they're smaller, they can impact.
Elliot Thorne, the Martian. Thank you for your service. He was in the Army from 2010 to 2013 as a 19K BTW. Thank you for your service, buddy. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every day of 2026.
The Straits of Hormuz, and they're hiding those. And every time they try to use them, we kill them. So our challenge over the next few weeks is identifying targets. And we have to keep complete surveillance. We own the airspace, so we're constantly surveilling day and night.
Charles B. has joined the chat. Operation E-Island Man Fury.
When we identify, we destroy. There's no problem in executing destruction. The challenge is identifying. But this is about vigilance. This is about discipline. This is about our capability. We're good at it. I'm just saying that it's more challenging towards the end than it was in the beginning.
All right, so one is NATO air defense system shut down in an Iranian ballistic missile that entered Turkish airspace on March 30th. So that's up here in Turkey. Here's number two, likely Iranian-backed Iraqis militia conducted a rocket attack that damaged an Iraqi army aircraft at Baghdad International Airport on March 29th.
General, when you look at our allies, I understand this is our mission. If you want to say that they weren't briefed, and this is our.
So here's the third one, March 29th. Iranian strikes damaged a service building at one point of the ministry's power and water desalination plants, killing one worker. And number four is up here. Iran has launched 7 missile barrages targeting Israel since 2 p.m. Eastern on March 29th, up here in northern Israel.
Mission. If you want to say that they weren't briefed, someone could debate that. What I find offensive is that Austria, Italy, some limitations in France, and the UK, slow to come around, are saying you can't use the bases that we finance in order to launch this operation. Do you find that disappointing?
Disappointing? That's not strong enough. It's outrageous. I mean, here we are doing something that's in our national interest, in the interest of allies in the region, to be sure, but in the world's interest. I mean, the world economy depends on a distribution of oil out of the Middle East. Everybody knows that. So the benefit that comes from pushing back the number one predator for almost 5 decades, Iran, and taking away their capability, everybody benefits from that. And the fact that they take such a narrow view of this, I mean, the president has a right to be furious over the fact that France will not let us fly over their airspace, that Italy and Germany and Spain are not letting us. Yeah.
It's outrageous.
These are bases there. These are U.S. bases and not letting us use our own U.S. bases to support the war.
How wild is that? Not letting your... How do they even do this? They're not allowing them to use the air bases.
What are they thinking?
Right. General George is now out, was asked to retire yesterday. He's a personal friend of yours. What do we lose when we lose General George?
He's a generational chief of staff, as far as I'm concerned. I haven't seen anybody quite like him. He's got the intelligence. He's got the discipline. His warfighting experience is enormous. He's got the warrior ethos. And he's transforming the Army and taking it into the new technology and warfare that is so changing. Right. The truth is he's leading the other services in most of all of that. Right. And I don't agree with his dismissal for sure because of what he's doing to the Army and the change it's impacting the department writ large.
That's what I've heard too. General, it was great to see you. Good luck at the Yankee game today and keeping up with everything. Thanks so much for coming in.
Yeah, great being here.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian.
Those were kind of...
There's no way this person could have ever known those distinctions. And they're, let me give you an example. So he made the distinction between consummatum est and finitum est, which is a Latin phrase. So consummatum est is that the sacrifice is complete. So in relationship to the sacrifice of Christ, he says consummatum est.
All right, so allegedly, the White House accidentally releases a video of Trump saying the truth about the war's priority. How wild is this going to be? But let's see if there's any accuracy here.
Before I play you this next very instructive clip, I want to note that the only reason we have it is because the White House seemingly accidentally posted a live stream of it, which they then tried to delete, but not before the internet saved it for posterity. And just for context, Donald Trump starts by referring to the head of the Office of
And by the way, we're going live every day of 2026. So make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Thank you.
Management and Budget, the Christian nationalist author of Project 2025, Russell Vogt.
We can't take care of daycare. We're a big country. We have 50 states. We have all these other people. We're fighting wars. We can't take care of daycare. You got to let a state take care of daycare, and they should pay for it, too. They should pay. They have to raise their taxes, but they should pay for it. We have to take care of one thing, military protection. We have to guard the country.
All right. All these little scams that have taken place, like that little scam daycare. Joining me.
What's he talking about? Daycare? Is he talking about all those scams that are happening in Minnesota and California that were exposed by Nick Shirley?
Now is Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen, member of the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. Let me throw some numbers out at you. Apparently, the Penn-Wharton budget model says this war has cost $65 billion so far. The White House is asking for $200 billion for it. The Tomahawk missiles alone are $3 billion. They take a year to two to build per missile. We've spent $3 billion on them. This is in a country where we had Doge ripping apart the government last year. We had people not getting their food stamps. We have people not getting their Obamacare subsidies. But we're spending somewhere between $65 billion and $200 billion on a war that no one is able to explain.
Well, Ali, that's right. And we should all remember that during the campaign, candidate Donald Trump promised that he would keep us out of foreign wars and focus instead on trying to make things better right here at home. Instead, he is, along with Prime Minister Netanyahu, started a foreign war. Prices are going up. And now he says, well, we've got to pay for this war in Iran by cutting back on federal investments. You played the clip with childcare, but there are also other points in that speech where he talks about cutting Medicaid, cutting Medicare. So the bottom line is the president who said he wouldn't start a war now wants to pay for it by cutting deeply into American health care programs and other programs that help American families here at home.
But that's not that surprising, is it, Senator? I mean, you go back to the history of wars that America has started. One group tends to benefit from this very well, either oil producers or munitions makers. I mean, that's the nature of the game. It becomes too much money that we have to pay for a war, so you're going to have to cut it from the people who can least afford it.
Ladies and gentlemen, L.A. Thorne, the Martian, has joined the chat and says, probably because the left wants universal health care and universal daycare, which would be the Minnesota Somalian scams on steroids. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications, because we're developing an amazing community and have the best chat in the world.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, you've got defense contractors who are going to be raking it in, and other folks who are close to the president are going to be raking it in. But the American people will suffer. And of course, this comes on top of what Donald Trump and Republicans in Washington did last year, right? They passed their so-called big, beautiful bill, which was beautiful if you're a billionaire. You got really big tax cuts. But to partially pay for that, they cut Medicaid, they cut food and nutrition programs. So now comes this year, and Donald Trump goes off and starts a war and says, well, we're going to have to cut back on Medicare. We're going to have to cut back on Medicaid. We're going to have to cut back on our efforts to make childcare more affordable. So at the end of the day, he is screwing the American people and doing exactly what he said he was going to avoid. He said he was going to focus on things here at home, keep us out of foreign wars. He's done exactly the opposite.
I was talking to Ben Rhodes about this a minute ago. I want to play it for you, something that he said about gas prices in the Oval Office. Let's listen.
Gas prices, today they hit $4.
We're $4, yeah, and we have a country that's not going to be throwing a nuclear weapon at us in 6 months.
But Americans are feeling the effects in the interim.
And they're also feeling a lot safer.
What is the plan to bring them back down?
All I have to do is leave Iran, and we'll be doing that very soon, and they'll become tumbling down.
We're not going to have a country that's going to be throwing a nuclear weapon at us in 6 months. That's just nonsensical talk. There's no. I mean, you know these things. You're on serious committees in the Senate. There was no discussion about Iran throwing a nuclear weapon at America in 6 months or 6 years.
It was a complete and total lie.
Isn't that the media's narrative? Like the whole reason that Israel and U.S. is in Iran?
Ali. And, the president himself, told the country last year that he had decimated
obliterated it.
Iran's nuclear enrichment program, obliterated it. And then his DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, testified publicly the other day that Iran has made no effort to try to reconstitute that nuclear enrichment program. And so that was just a complete and total lie. And as you and Ben Rhodes discussed, I mean, they're nowhere near any kind of ballistic missile that can reach the United States. So this was all a fabrication by the President of the United States to try to justify his actions while Americans are hurting here at home. We've lost 13 of our service members, hundreds wounded. As you discussed, thousands of civilians killed in the region. And we're paying $2 billion a day, we, the American taxpayers, while gas prices are going up. And now Donald Trump says, well, we've got to cut back on other investments that are important to the American people. This war should never have started. We should end it now. Donald Trump is talking about asking for another $200 billion. And I can tell you, Ali, I won't vote for one more dime for this illegal war of choice.
I think we're going to find a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who are going to say no one has given us an explanation as to why we need to be spending another dime on this war. Senator, good to see you as always. Thank you for joining us. Joining us now.
Hold on, wait. Loki, are you telling me that you don't want our tax dollars to paint goat toenails in Somalia? Come on, man. You gotta have some foreign aid someplace, right? Everybody, we're going live every day at 2026, so make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications.
And then he gives up his spirit, right? So it's completed. He's finally completed everything that was necessary in order for our full redemption and our full healing and all of that. But
So more on this with Fox News contributor Mark Thiessen. He was inside the room for the president's address, and get your first reaction here. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Dana.
So tell us a little bit about that moment.
Well, it was an honor to be in the room and watch that address. You and I have been in a few of those in the past, but President Trump does it like nobody else does. And the reality is, he did exactly what a commander-in-chief is supposed to do during a time of war. He explained to the American people what our objective.
Irish 1379 has joined the chat. Yes, indeed, Donald Trump was a Democrat, and then he wasn't too fond of the Democratic policies and views and directions, so he became a Republican. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every day at 2026.
He reported on our progress in achieving those objectives, and he laid out the path forward for how we bring this mission to a completion. It's exactly what a president should do, and he doesn't really.
Barry has joined the chat and says that shows you how bad that party became.
Well, this is a tool that he doesn't use all that much. He's probably the greatest ad-libber who's ever been in the Oval Office, and he riffs like nobody else does. But sometimes sitting down and taking the time to prepare a speech, to think it through, to lay out a clear message to the American people and ask the American people for their support is the right thing to do, and he did it brilliantly last night.
There was some reporting that I know the White House press secretary has pushed back on that said that the president was really going to take it to NATO. In fact, I think he said that as well. He didn't end up doing that in the speech. Any insight into why?
Well, first of all, the reporting is that he's going to blast NATO and announce pulling out of the mission, and then he.
Hey, Ken, D9J6J, thank you for joining in on the chat. Where are you from? And do you think America is great?
Doesn't do that, and then the critics say, "Oh, there was nothing new in the speech." No matter what Donald Trump does, somebody's going to be unhappy with it. I mean, look, he is very right to be upset with NATO. We never asked our allies to send planes to fly alongside ours in bombing Iran, but we did ask them to let us use our bases in Europe that we spend billions of dollars each year. You overfly their territory, and many of the NATO allies have not done that, and they're dragging their heels on helping us open the Strait of Hormuz. They're the ones dependent on the Strait of Hormuz, not us, for energy, for natural gas, for jet fuel. And so he's right to demand that they play a role in it.
Here is some Democrats, as you said, maybe this is always going to be their response, no matter what President Trump said. But anyway, let's listen to what they had to say after.
No
this.
American is going to bed tonight with a more clear picture of what the end game is and when this is going to wrap up.
It was a pretty pathetic address that just showed how weak and clueless he is. I mean, it would be almost comical if the stakes were not so high.
Every single time President Trump gets involved, things get worse for the American people. So he had no...
Joseph MD has joined the chat and says, I thought Trump was anti-war. Same, bro. I think a lot of people agree with you, yeah.
discussion of why we got into this war, what we hope to achieve, or how we're going to get out of this war.
And they also keep pointing their finger to gas prices, which, of course, it's kind of interesting. I'm old enough to remember the Biden administration and gas prices at that point. But regardless, there is politics involved here now. How will the Republicans manage that?
Well, first of all, that quote from Mikey Sherrill, he literally did what she said he didn't do. He reported on the objectives, he reported on the progress, and he explained the way forward to bring it to an end in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Two, if we can't stand a few weeks of high gas prices in order to eliminate the threat of an Iranian nuclear program with missiles able to reach Europe and eventually the United States, we're no longer a superpower. And the reality is what Donald Trump is doing is he is showing that we are, in fact, a superpower. And quite frankly, the combination of Israel and the United States taking on this regime, this is an ultra power. This is the greatest demonstration of air power in the history of the world. We are absolutely achieving all of our objectives. This will go down as one of the greatest military campaigns in the history of our country. And Iran will never again be able to threaten the world with nuclear weapons. And that is an achievement for the ages.
And the president also pointing out that the regime, he said, killed 45,000 of its own people. So, well, happy
That's
Easter weekend
number.
to you, Mark. Thanks for being on the show.
20,000 of their own. Goodness gracious, goodness gracious. Everybody, we're going live every day at 2026, so make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And we are happy to hear from both sides, the left and the right.
Thank you, Dana.
So now the president also saying the attacks will increase in the coming weeks. Want to bring in General Keith Kellogg, former commander of the U.S. Army's elite 82nd Airborne Division. And General, good to have you back here. There's 1,000 pounds, as the president said, of nuclear dust still in Iran. Here's how he addressed that last night.
The nuclear sites that we obliterated with the B-2 bombers have been hit so hard that it would take months to get near the nuclear dust, and we have it under intense satellite surveillance and control. If we see them make a move, even a move for it, we'll hit them with missiles very hard again. We have all the cards, they have none.
General, from a military perspective, then, what comes next after what we've just seen for the past 32 days?
Yeah, Bill, thanks for having me. Look, let's give full credit to President Trump. It took guts to do what he has done. He's the only president who was willing to do it. I don't trust a theocratic regime that chants death to America to actually do something honest and keep the enriched uranium out of their hands or develop a nuclear weapon. I just don't. It's a matter of trust. So I would like to get it out of there. I would like for them to give it to the IAEA or somebody like that. They don't have to give it to us, but just get it out of Iran.
Can we?
So they cannot touch it. Can you do it? Sure, you can do it. It's high risk. You can go in there and do it with special operations units to go into the tunnels and get it out of there. We have the capability to do that. When I say risk, that means you put boots on the ground to do something like that. But we have proven that our military is without question the best in the world, and it can do things that most of us could not believe could be happening. And I give them full credit for that. But as long as they've got a theocratic regime, we don't know who's really in charge. Currently, there's a guy named Vahidi in charge, but Pezeshkian, who's the president, really doesn't have much say. And I would like to see that regime changed out, only because as long as you've got a theocratic regime, I would prefer the mullahs go back to the mosque instead of running the government. But as long as they've got that under their control, regardless of what they say, I don't trust them. And I'd like to get it out of there. Give it to somebody neutral. Give it to Switzerland or give it to the IAEA, but just get it out of there.
So the nuclear material is one issue. Strait of Hormuz is another. How do you see that developing now, General?
Well, I think the president's right. I mean, this is not our game. The European nations and some of the Pacific nations need to step up and do that as well. I've always said, and I believe that I would like to take their oil, take their command and control of their oil, like taking Karg Island, or put forces on the ground to control the strait. You could do that by taking Bandar Abbas. Years ago, we've been doing this for years. When I commanded the Army's 82nd, one of our game plans, one of the plans to execute, was in fact taking Bandar Abbas. You can do that by maintaining and clearing the straits. They should have freedom of navigation. It's a global issue, and I'm really disappointed the European allies have not stepped up to it. Look, I'm one of those guys right now, just tell them, look, with NATO right now, then execute Article 13. Article 13 is you give a year's notice that we're out of this. We're going to develop a new security apparatus. NATO doesn't count anymore. If they're not going to allow us to use the bases that we've developed and paid for and worked with, then they're not an alliance anymore. They're not friends
let me
of ours,
follow up on
that. Their responsibility.
That's the third area of concern.
Terry S6I3V says that is wrong. The number is closer to 3,000, and they were not killed by the Iranian government, but killed by a weaponized radical insurgency funded by Israel and the United States. If you have any proof or data to back that up, I'd love to see that. Thank you so much for joining in on the chat. We're always looking for the truth, and make sure y'all like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We're going live every single day of 2026.
Turn here, and that's what happens with the NATO alliance here. I don't know if it's fractured or not. There's a great piece in the Wall Street Journal, by the way, about the Strait of Hormuz and these rock islands, and the Iranians consider them to be aircraft carriers. And they are armed, not heavily populated at all, but they are right there in the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf. The Journal writes this: bomb Iran but blow up NATO. It says it would be the height of folly and help Moscow, Tehran, and Beijing. Do you see this being more stretched now than it needs to be, General?
Well, look, I disagree with that. It's not a threat of basically moving away from NATO is actually a strength on our part that shows that really we're questioning your capacity in a military capacity to go forward in the future. Poland's doing a great job. Germany's rearming. The Brits haven't done very much at all. The Italians are not doing very much at all. And this is one of those, this is a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call for the world. And President Trump had the guts to go do something about Iran. Nobody else has been able to do that before. I mean, we talked about it during Trump 1, and we never were able to pull the trigger on it. He has done that. He's sort of like the alpha male of all the world leaders. Give him credit for doing that. And I would take control of those islands. You can do it. That is not a hard thing to do. You've got the 82nd Airborne and the 1st Brigade of the 82nd is forward. You've got special operations people control the land just like the Romans did years ago. You know, I got to give you a historical analogy. You know, for years before the birth of Christ, the Romans and the Carthaginians fought it out for 3 Punic Wars. And finally, the Romans had enough, and they went to Carthage, and they basically destroyed Carthage, and they basically never had a problem with Carthage again well in the future. This is a time we just need to go in, either occupy the ground, take certain key positions, not go into Iran writ large, but take certain key developmental purpose islands or facilities like Karg.
Brutal Facts has joined the chat. He says Trump's house is clean. That's why he had to clean Venezuela and Iran. Please let me know what you mean by that. I'm trying to understand. And everybody, please like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every single day of 2026.
Island and control it. We'll control the oil. President Trump said that in 1988. Let's do it now.
Yeah, there are 2 MEUs in the area too, as well, for the Marine Expeditionary Unit. Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, thank you, sir, for coming on today.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
Our vice president is in charge of a new division. It's called the Fraud Division. You know, if we straighten out half the fraud that took place in this country over the years, we'd have not only a balanced budget, we'd have a big surplus.
Going to make fraudsters know that they're going to suffer some consequences.
So the gravy train's over, the party's over, and we're coming for fraudsters.
Welcome back to Special Report. We're pleased to be joined by the CMS Administrator, Dr. Mehmet Oz. Thanks for doing this. Fraud is the topic of the day, and obviously you're at the forefront of some of this. Broadly, the American people don't have a full sense yet of how big a deal this is, right?
Well, if you just look at the
money that we pay as a federal government for insurance, which is for Medicare and Medicaid and related programs, we think there's about $100 billion of fraud.
$100 billion.
Now, let me just put that in perspective so that folks can sort of anchor on. A lot of Americans who are working are concerned that Medicare won't be there for them. They're worried it won't be solvent. If we're able to take out the fraud in Medicare alone, we would double the life expectancy of the Medicare Trust Fund. It would add years more to the solvency of this program, which would give comfort to everyone working today that it's going to be there for them. The question really is how did it get so bad? And part of it is COVID, because when you start throwing money at problems, you don't watch where it's going, and fraudsters learn they can corrupt the system because they never realized it was so easy to steal from the government. Then they'll start to, weaponize it and use it in other areas like Medicare and Medicaid. We now have it all a government approach. So yesterday, for example, I spent the pre-dawn hours in Los Angeles busting into a swank neighborhood home owned by a doctor and a nurse who had been defrauding the hospice system there for millions of dollars.
And this is a big SWAT team move. I mean, you hadn't been on one of those.
I've never been on this, but dozens of young, just hyper prepared individuals. There were drones and planes and these trucks they could drive through gates that they were able to blast through.
Thank you so much, Terry. Appreciate it.
And no one got hurt. And they stunned these folks in pre-dawn hours, and they were one of 7 hospice owners that were shut down yesterday. To put that in perspective, in the prior 4 years, the governor of California had shut down 4 hospices. We shut down 7 in one night. And I'll get news for you today, Brett. Let's announce and make it clear, everybody, we've shut down already, just in the last 10 weeks, 221 hospices in California.
Oh, wait, in the state of California, 220.
Yeah, in Los Angeles, not even the state, in Los Angeles. So we're able to dramatically accelerate a process that had been meandering along in California. And we believe that there are 1,800 hospices in California. That's, by the way, about a third of the entire nation's hospice load is just in Los Angeles. We're going to be able to shut down, we hope, appropriately, half of them.
We saw what happened in Minnesota. Now we're seeing the tip of the iceberg in California. Every time we see a fraud bust like this, it's framed as kind of bad actors and that it's happening on such a large scale because the system allows for it. What incentives inside Medicare and Medicaid are actually enabling this kind of systemic issue? It's obviously been going on for years, right?
Well, part of it is that government had been fragmented in its approach. So yesterday, the U.S. Attorney, Billy Asaili, led the charge. He got the Office of Inspector General, the Department of Justice. He got everyone working together. We're bringing in Scott Bessent in Treasury because guess what? Bank fraud's a big part of this. And we've also got a problem that's even larger, I think, in that we had told people in the federal government for the last 4 years under the Biden administration, don't do your job. Literally, we told people who were in charge of fraud that they should just sort of calm down. We don't want to have a big problem with this. This is not a legitimate issue. We just enroll people. We kept score in Medicare and Medicaid by looking at how many people were in the program, as opposed to were the right people in the program. And let's extend that now to autism. So what happened in Minnesota is they would pay moms to dishonestly say their children had autism. Brett, if you have a child in a neighborhood that's autistic,
that's wild. Did you guys hear about that? My goodness.
Need support. It's expensive and it's worth the investment. We should do it. It's the right thing. But if every child in the neighborhoods is autistic, then no one really is getting those services. So you take scarce resources and funding and you now stretch it out. But here's the biggest message I can deliver tonight. This is critical. If these corrupt fraudsters are willing to steal your money, they will steal your health. They'll steal your life. I've seen it firsthand. Hospice owners who are willing to throw away the benefits that these older folks should have, and they die because they don't realize they've been tricked into signing up on hospice they never wanted. We have the same thing happen with durable medical equipment. Brett, we're right now in the epicenter of this. Durable medical equipment suppliers in South Florida outnumber the number of McDonald's by 2-fold. There's twice as many people selling wheelchairs and canes and braces in South Florida than there are McDonald's. How is that possible?
All right, so do you have enough people? Does this task force have enough stuff? Are you going to be able to get after this to the point where the American people can go, okay, this is moving the needle, this is making a difference?
Yes, because the president and the vice president and the task force says yes. So I spent yesterday, when we weren't doing the bust, talking to collaborators and talking about how...
Okay, so another thing to consider with the Strait of Hormuz is stability for allies and key partners depend heavily on the Hormuz oil, like Japan, South Korea, and Europe. And if they suffer, the U.S. economy and alliances suffer as well. So there's the strategic leverage versus Iran. Iran obviously sits on one side of the strait, and it has threatened to close during the conflicts. Man. Yeah, it's a tough one.
We're going to be able to recruit the right people back into government because we need people. And by the way, please, I came on the show in part to recruit folks. This is a generational opportunity to serve your nation. If you're interested in this space of fraud, come on, give us a call. We want to hear your tips. I found out that of the...
Okay, and so for those conspiracies that y'all were bringing up, the tension in Hormuz is actually money for weapons companies and the military-industrial complex. Obviously, defense spending does rise in conflict, but there's no actual proof wars are staged solely for this. This is just what I'm reading here. So, do I agree with it? I can't say 100% I do, but I can tell you 100% I don't know. But if anyone has any facts and any data to show me that is inaccurate or accurate, I'd be happy to look at it. And we're going live every day at 2026, so make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Referrals we were getting in my agency from the Office of Inspector General. These are like detectives finding fraud. We were only acting on about a third. Well, if you only act on a third of what detectives are telling you is fraud, you're throwing away a lot of good intel, but also the detectives stop referring cases because they don't think you're serious. I told my team I want 100% of their referrals acted on, and I want to hear about it if we don't do this. And that's what everyone across government is doing because the vice president has made it really clear. He doesn't want the gaming anymore. He doesn't want one arm of government holding back another arm. We are all laser focused on dealing with the crisis the American public is furious about.
Can AI and data processing...
And C-Man 1993 says, don't forget Trump lied his way out of serving in the military, but he's such a great leader. Please, I can't even call him a man. So what actually happened, he got student deferments in 1960s. He received 4 student deferments. And then he had a medical deferment in 1968, bone spurs in his heels. So, yeah, he had deferments, but they were for medical reasons. And we're going live every day at 2026. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications.
Help you with the fraud detection real time to be able to deal with it on the front end.
Brett, you're so smart. Come work with us. You got it. What you just said is profoundly important. One of the beauties of AI is that we could use it to catch fraud earlier and more accurately. But we could also use it to defend ourselves because guess who's using AI? The fraudsters. They're corrupting the system with sophisticated tools to hide their ill-gotten gains from us. So by us using technology, AI in particular, we're going to copy what's already happening in banking. You don't think bank managers are good at fraud. If they were, they wouldn't be bank managers. AI is being used to help them think like a fraudster. We're doing the same thing for the first time. We've stopped billions of dollars from leaving the door of CMS. The goal for us is the money never leaves the building. And AI has helped us do that. Again, billions of dollars already because we can identify fraud as soon as the fraudsters start corrupting the system.
And in the big picture, in the background, is insolvency of Medicare, which is now what, 2032?
2032 is when we predict the Medicare Trust Fund to go bankrupt. We can double that life expectancy. Medicaid, a program that I love and adore. The president says he loves and cherishes these programs. Let me be crystal clear. If we don't protect these programs from fraud, they will be destroyed by the corrupt system. And we don't want our most vulnerable citizens, folks who have had trouble, as Hubert Humphrey said, and it adorns the entryway to our building. You know, we want people at the dawn of their life, at the twilight of their life, the young and the old, and those living in the shadows to be protected. If we don't take care of these beautiful programs, the crown jewels of our social safety net program, they will implode under the weight of the corruption that's now being pushed on them.
All right, you mentioned the president. His approval.
Duff Nug 5810 has joined in on the chat and says, only an idiot thinks this is about Republican or Democrat. It's about the shadow government, Israel in the war machine. Trump is a clown. and a pond. Please, if anyone has any more data to support that claim, would love to look at that. And make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because we're going live every day of 2026.
Approval overall 43%, disapprove 57%. On healthcare, it's 38%, 61%.
And in the chat, actually, what I can do is, let's see if I can. Okay. Do you guys approve or disapprove of Donald Trump?
Disapprove. A lot of Republicans looking at these numbers going, the midterms right around the corner. Do you look at approval? Are you looking at how the public is perceiving some of these actions?
The president saved Medicaid. The president came into office with a proposed additional expenditure of $5.4 trillion in Medicaid alone. We were becoming a big healthcare system with a small country attached. So the president said, don't cut Medicaid. In fact, put more money into Medicaid. And we did, $200 billion more over the next decade. But we're not going to pay for legalized money laundering. And what we've been able to do is create a solvent program which will keep Medicaid alive for the rest of my life, allow Medicare's trust fund to last longer as we deal with the trust fund crisis and the fraud. And by doing those brave decisions in the Working Families Tax Cut legislation, we added a lot of other health benefits. For example, for the first time ever, the largest investment in rural health care ever in our country, doubling the amount of money we're putting for Medicaid into these programs that help 60 million Americans who don't live in urban areas. We have done the right thing. So when people hear the stories, they nod their head up and down. They just want to know that we're doing the right thing. We're tightening our belt for the right reasons.
But when you are in an environment with low approval ratings, you're getting ready for an election, you've had Secretary Noem let go of her position, the Attorney General let go of her position. Are people inside the administration looking over their shoulder?
I'm not. Secretary Kennedy's not. And the president calls me all the time with very precise, well-targeted questions. He's an excellent executive, a superb leader. And all I need to know is that when I make a tough decision that I know we'll get some blowback on, but it's the right decision, the president says, go ahead. And you know what he usually says? I don't care what they say. Do what's right for the American people.
Dr. Mehmet Oz, we appreciate the time.
I appreciate you, Matt.
Thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch.
It's not finished yet. The finishing occurs once he's buried. So they have to take him down, Our Lady embraces him, and then they put him in the tomb, right? So that he made that distinction. And I'm realizing this is one of those indicators that you're not going to see those kinds of distinctions being made by a human being who has never studied theology in any sense.
And this is not a person who has?
No, nothing. I mean, she finished high school and that's about it. So
seriously,
yeah. And so, and there's other times when they've made distinctions that are just like, in fact, one time in the Catholic tradition, we actually believe Our Lady was assumed into heaven because she was so pure and so perfect and sinless that God assumed her body into heaven. And so it was the feast of that day, and I was doing a series of exorcisms, and I asked the demon, I said, or I commanded him to tell me. I mentioned the fact that this was her a moment of greatest glory. And he just looks at me flatly, which demons lie all the time, but you know they're telling the truth. There's ways we can ferret that out too, but they'll just give you a pan. They'll just pan you and just say, no, that's not how that works. And I said, what was it then? He said, it was her moment of greatest triumph. She had gone through life without committing sin, and now she's entering into heaven triumphant. I said, was it crowning of heaven, Queen of heaven and earth? Because we believe that as Catholics. And he says, no, that was her moment of greatest honor. I'm like, okay, that makes sense, because honor is praise or recognition for excellence. And so God was recognizing her excellence in this way. And so I finally just commended to him, well, what was it? He said, standing under the cross in perfect virtue. Later, he revealed that that he said, other than the actual passion and death of Jesus Christ, he said it was the most glorious event in all of history.
Amazing.
It is with great pleasure to welcome back on set General Jack Keane, Fox News Senior Strategic Analyst. General, thank you for doing this. We appreciate it. You know General McCormick? You know him? He's speaking the truth.
McKenzie?
Yeah. Rather, sorry.
Yeah, I know him very well. He was an outstanding commander in CENTCOM, and had a lot of challenges himself. And he's reflecting something that we're very much aware of. This actually, our planning in dealing with the regime actually started when they took over. And when they first killed over 300 of us in 1983, when Reagan was president, blew up 2 embassies and blew up our Marine barracks, we realized we had an adversary on our hands. So it was in those, even.
Loki P2Q has joined the chat and says, I am poor, not stupid. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every day of 2026.
In those early days that Central Command began to plan for a war with Iran, given what they had already done to us, and then they continued to kill us. What President Trump is different from those previous 7 presidents is while many of them had to deal with Iran, who has killed Americans, all 7 of them had to deal with their overall aggression and destabilization. And not one of them was ever really willing to confront them in any consequential way. And I love what you're saying up there in the introduction. President Trump is trying to put an end to this 47-year experience. That is the purpose of what is taking place here. And what's the motivation? There's intense motivation that came out after the 12-day war to include our taking down their nuclear capability. What Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump recognized, based on their intelligence services looking at this, that Iran recommitted to all of their goals and objectives. And that was missile development, Chinese helping them, more drones, recover their nuclear program. And
how are you, Helen Tabari? Thank you for joining in on the chat.
And the fourth thing is they began to continue to funding the proxies. They used different banks to do it, passed it through Istanbul, hundreds of millions of dollars, and nothing had changed. If anything, they were recommitted to all of those goals. And they realized we have got to do something about it. We can't wait, because they're developing longer range ballistic missiles, more lethality, recover a nuclear program with the potential, obviously, to use it. And that created a sense of urgency. And then they looked to the central commander, they looked to the IDF commander, and they are dusting off plans that already exist and have existed for years.
That's the thing. I just, what General McKenzie said is so important, because you've got these Democratic senators and House members, we hear about it every day from somebody, and legacy media. There's no planning. Of course there's planning. They are insulting the military, and they are using falsehoods. And that's why I think you've said this a lot. Now you've got company with this General McKenzie. I mean, it's something that needed to be said. It needed to be put out there. Of course there's been they've been planning for almost 5 decades.
Yeah, and they don't only just put a plan in place, then they go out and practice it.
Yeah,
in tabletop exercises, CPXs, and then they adjust the plans, because the enemy always has a vote. And what we do, so our audience can understand, we organize a red team to oppose us in those computer exercises, and we give that red team all the resources that Iran has, and they're operating completely independent. There's no coaching by anybody, and they put huge pressure on a blue force. So as a result of that, all the options that Iran could possibly come up with are exercised. I mean, it was a revelation to some people when they imposed their will on the Straits of Hormuz, and they said, "Oh, Americans weren't prepared for the Straits." You got to be kidding me. When I was a division commander, 2-star general, a corps commander, 3-star general, and a 4-star general decades ago, we knew that. We knew that would be one of the first things that they would do, and we have worked against that. We know exactly what these guys are doing and what they can do to interfere with us if we begin to impose our will on them, which we will do.
Yes.
Our military plans call for us to open the Straits of Hormuz and use military force to do it, and to secure it and keep it open, to recover the nuclear, whatever that is left there, and finish off their ballistic missile program as much as we possibly can, to include drones. And we will have accomplished our assigned missions. That's a fact.
On Hormuz, General, there's been a lot of talk about this Pentagon final push, more troops coming into the Persian Gulf theater, the Mideast theater in general. Can you comment on that? What does that mean? I mean, we will reopen Hormuz, and in the next segment, we're going to talk about the Venezuelan model of who's going to run the money and the oil. But in terms of the military side of this, as you say, it will be reopened. A lot of people think this new addition to troops are part of that reopening. Do you think they are?
Well, the president has options, and certainly the Straits of Hormuz, cargo, and what it truly represents, 90% of their oil distribution is sitting right there on that island. And he has options to exercise here. In the war games that we've played in the past, we have used ground forces for short-range missions in, out, maybe stay a few days, depending on what the mission is. This is not an invasion force, to be sure. Anybody in other words, put that out of your mind. We're talking about 10,000, 20,000 troops at most here. An invasion force would be something north of 100,000. So this is give a very specific mission. It has a certain time duration associated with how long does it take to accomplish that mission, and then they're out of there.
And I'm just going to guess our Air Force has been planning this anyway by taking out various Iranian, whatever they have, missile sites or drone sites that are in that neighborhood, either on the cliffs of the Hormuz Strait or someplace. But there are, I'm just guessing, but I'll ask you, has this been in preparation already?
We have been working on this probably ever since they imposed their will. We began executing that war plan. And what does that mean? That means taking down anti-ship missiles at distance, long-range ballistic missiles at distance. The Shahid drones can go almost 1,000 miles, so we're going deep into Iran that can access the Straits of Hormuz, and then we're working close in to deal with what close in? Mine layers, small boats that could be suicide boats to interfere with shipping. They could fire drones from that small boat as well, or fire other kinds of short-range missiles at a boat. All of that is being exercised. And then the other thing is, do we have to control a piece of ground there in addition to having what overhead? What we have right now in the area are Apache attack helicopters, very effective, move slower than a jet fighter. We have A-10 Warhogs, which is an Air Force airplane designed with a single purpose. It's the only airplane in the entire Air Force, Navy.
All right, so the interviewer asked him, the Venezuelan model, who is going to run the money and the oil? So currently in Venezuela, the state oil company, PDVSA. And who runs the money? Currently, it's the Central Bank of Venezuela. But one thing to think about is whoever controls the government controls the oil and the money. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every single day of 2026.
We have a Marine Corps inventory who's specifically designed to provide close support for troops on the ground. So they are operating in there right now. And as convoy came through, we would have drones up in the air supporting it. We'd have counted drones on those convoys, even on the merchant ships. We would have Apaches. We would have those close air support aircraft as well. There would be plenty of opportunity to suppress whatever they're going to throw at it. It doesn't mean, Larry, that they can't fire at us. They likely will be able to. It does mean, in our judgment, it's an acceptable risk, and we can minimize that risk.
Well, as you say, on this and other things, you're going to take out Iran's capabilities. I love that word, capabilities. I think that covers a lot of ground, and I think it's important that people hear you on this subject. Let me ask another thing. I guess it's on the area of diplomacy. So President Trump is saying he thinks he's negotiating with a new regime. That is to say, the leadership of the first regime has all been taken out. The leadership of the second regime has all been taken out. Now he thinks there's a third regime. If I get Mohammed Ghalibad, the former, I guess he was Speaker of the Parliament, or is Speaker of the Parliament, he was a member of the Revolutionary Guards. I don't know how new this is, but the president is saying, to some extent, it's like regime change. Now, I know you followed the diplomacy here. What do you make of this?
Well, they're different.
Everybody, Sam Sharrow is in the chat. Thank you so much for helping me with that. How's it now? How's it now? Check. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every day of 2026.
People, I think, but have affiliation with the same regime.
Right.
These are all elite hardliners. Galibov, the speaker, he was an IRGC general. He was in charge of a force that repressed the Iranian people years ago. He's as much of a thug as the Ayatollah was and all the other thugs that we've just been killing over the last couple of weeks. They're all part of that elitism, hardliners for sure. Can we maybe bend them a little bit more to their will? Because I think the number one thing in their mind right now, Larry, is personal survival.
Yeah.
The second thing is the regime stays in place and so they can stay in power and have all the benefits of what they do. Remember, these people are all very, very wealthy. All of those generals in the IRGC, all those police commanders, they are all multi-millionaires.
It was a business. They were running a huge business enterprise.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like a mafia organization.
Yeah.
That's what it's like.
Yeah.
Everybody's wealthy.
Yeah.
And they want to maintain that lifestyle.
We need to bust through that, don't we? I mean, golly. I keep asking you.
The best thing to do with them is to kill them.
Yeah.
And that is the truth of it.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you don't use that word lightly, but
Yes,
these are killers of their own people, 30-something thousand.
What do you think, Chet? Is he accurate? Is that the best thing to do? Make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every day of 2026.
A couple thousand plus Americans in this deal as well. That is the best answer for them.
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm not the expert you are, but that makes the most sense. I keep asking, there is a regular army, which by and large we have not hit too hard. Somebody from the regular army, you told me that a lot of them are draftees. Most of them are draftees. They're not as ideologically crazed as the Revolutionary Guard. I'm waiting for someone like that to come forward. Or, I don't know, maybe the Shah's son. I mean, he has certain claims to this and that. It's got to be somebody other than the Revolutionary Guard people.
Yeah, I think we have a ways to go yet, because if we end it, my preference is a military end to this, because I think we can force the economic collapse of the country, particularly by seizing, not destroying, but seizing their oil distribution point at Carg Island. And I think that is a much better preference than if we get a deal, we're going to throw the regime a lifeline, because they're going to want sanction relief. They're going to want frozen assets released. They're going to get billions of dollars. And what does that do? That extends them and gives them an opportunity to recover.
You've said the military can do all the conditions we have, which are the capabilities of Iran. The military can handle that, with deal or no deal.
They can handle it.
Yes, sir.
There's no doubt in my mind about it. The central commander today is Admiral Brad Cooper. He's an exceptional officer. I've talked to him many times during all of this. He's on top of it. He's got the backing and confidence of the President of the United States, the Chairman of Joint Chiefs, and Secretary Hegseth. They are doing an outstanding job out there. They are very confident.
Terrific stuff. General Keane, as always, thank you, sir. We appreciate it very much.
Great talking to you, Larry.
Always.
And love it in person.
Always. Yes, sir. It's great to see you. By the way, you look very well.
Wave of megatech IPOs could drive markets this year, led by AI giants and space players eyeing record valuations. SpaceX targeting a valuation of more than $2 trillion in a potential IPO, which could make it one of the most valuable companies in the world. OpenAI, meanwhile, closing a record-breaking $122 billion funding round, valuing that company at more than $850 billion. The ChatGPT maker also eyeing a potential IPO as it looks to scale and compete with rivals like Google and Anthropic, which is also considering a public debut of its own. I want to bring in Sandbox AQ CEO Jack Henry. Jack, what are your thoughts in particular? It's not just the size and the valuations of these IPOs, especially when it comes to SpaceX, but I think it's more indicative of kind of where we're going with the market and with investments, and that is space and AI.
Cheryl, yeah, absolutely. Good morning. Good to see you today. The second half of this year promises to be very different than the first half. As you mentioned, I think we're going to see the IPO of space.
Steve Curry, L5K says Trump only did this to avoid the release of the Island Man files. Remember those? What do you think, Chet? Is that accurate?
SpaceX, people think of as a rocket company, but actually the rockets are just a platform for many applications. Starlink is the first mega application on the SpaceX platform. It brings in recurring revenue. It's growing by leaps and bounds and gives SpaceX a unique position in the market.
Mick Riley answered the question. This guy wants to eliminate all of them. That would be a war crime. This guy's carrying a lot of hatred. Well said, well said.
And a global reach. And so we expect that to be a very successful IPO, 5 major banks.
Black Snake US says, LOL, your bot is racist. So actually what the Restream bot is it takes all of the chats from the vertical YouTube and the horizontal YouTube, and then it correlates them all together so everyone can communicate together. So if you see Restream and then you have an @ sign, the A with a circle around it, that's the username that is actually talking. And so it's restreaming from vertical to horizontal. So all of us can get together. So make sure y'all like, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going live every day of 2026. Thank you, Black Snake US.
Are going to be doing that globally. But as you said, also OpenAI and Anthropic most likely to also file and go public, if not by Q4 this year, then certainly by Q1 of the coming year. One of the reasons for tapping the public market, Cheryl, is to also access those retail investors. To date, most of the investors have been big institutions, sovereign wealth funds, pension plans. But now retail investors will have a chance to get at these 3 interesting companies.
Do you think, though, that retail investors should be trying to take a part in these IPOs, in particular the SpaceX?
Well, given the extreme focus of many retail investors online on various stock trading boards, there's no way to stop them. They're going to be involved in this. We hear that up to 30% of the IPO raise may be allocated towards the retail investor. And each of the banks that is involved in raising money for SpaceX in this upcoming IPO have extensive retail arms that they can tap into, be it high net worth, but also even retail beyond that. You're also probably going to see Robinhood and many other online platforms participate by allocating also for these IPOs, either pre-IPO or post-IPO.
Yeah, it is exciting.
Mick Riley says, much more this type of hatred will make the U.S. insular. It will be dangerous for Americans to travel outside the U.S. Hopefully you're wrong, but that's actually been stated by a few professionals saying, you know, if the U.S. makes too many mistakes, every civilian will kind of have to pay for the mistakes of a few people who have power over the military and the decision making. So yeah, it's a very good thing to think about. And also another thing to think about is it's kind of important not to generalize people, even if they're from a country or a place or have a religion. You know, it's not necessarily the smartest thing to automatically slap something on them, but you never know. Sometimes those generalities are accurate.
Again, these valuations are just incredible. I do want to talk about cybersecurity. So Anthropic says that it accidentally exposed internal code for its Claude tool. They called it human error. It wasn't a breach, but the leak, it didn't hit customer data, but it's giving rivals a glimpse into the product roadmap there, and that raises fresh concerns around AI competition and security. I do want to get your thoughts on that. I mean, I understand that they're saying that it's human error, but when you see these systems breached like this, it does raise concerns.
Well, the bigger picture, that particular case was human error, but Anthropic's more interesting announcement was back in November 13 of this past year when they, and we applaud them for doing this, came forward and said that a state-sponsored hacker from overseas attempted to get into 30 of their customers who are using Anthropic Claude via the use of that AI. And so there's definitely a very big concern as we look towards AI agents now, Cheryl, that are now proliferating across large companies and small. Agents can definitely provide you a lot of productivity and potentially increase in revenue and earnings, but they also come with cyber caution because they have the keys to the kingdom in your company. company, and they can actually expose a lot of the crown jewels of the company. And so that's why.
All right, y'all. We're going live every single day of 2026. So make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications, because we're developing an amazing community over here. And for all those people who are concerned about those people who are just spewing hate all the time, you know, it's okay. Let them drink that haterade. Just let that hate fall off of your back like water rolls down the back of a duck. And I love you. The Lord loves you. Make sure you make the correct decisions and follow your dreams. Happy Easter.